All right, good evening, everybody. Everybody can take a seat. Welcome to the March 26th Board of Selectmen meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending a little earlier this week, as we have a very robust agenda. If we could, to start the meeting, everyone stand for our invocation in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord God, we come before you with great thanks for the many blessings you've provided on our community. We have a big agenda tonight, Father. We'd ask that you would keep our minds sharp and focused, and that we would proceed in trying to establish the governance within our community. We thank you for all that you've done, and as always, those of us that prayed, we pray to you in the manner we were each taught. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right. So first and foremost, due to limited circumstances, we have Steve Sadler, Selectman Sadler's on the phone at an airport. Thank you, Steve, for joining us for as long as you can. We will be communicating with Steve, answering questions and things of that nature until he has to drop off. Okay? Steve, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can.
You should mute his phone if he's listening.
Yeah, Steve, do me a favor, mute your phone, and unless you have to chime in, okay?
I will.
Thank you.
I will, absolutely.
All right. So first on our agenda, we have a public meeting planned. So I'm going to open up the public meeting here at
6:03.
60. It's actually 6:08 on the computer. Who has an accurate time?
So many devices nowadays, you don't know which one's right.
Say at 6:08. Okay. All right. You take a roll call for that. Yep.
Just declare the meeting open.
All right, so it's we have a public meeting that's open. So we are calling this just so that anybody who has any feedback for us regarding this proposal, I guess, to the town can be heard. I ask that if anybody does have any comments, you come up, introduce yourself, address, and then let her rip. So.
Joe, are
Yeah.
you talking about the plastic bags?
Yeah.
That's posted for 7.
Oh, that's posted for 7 as well?
Yeah.
We had to lead with that.
No, we were gonna do the SRO.
Oh, okay. My bad then. I thought it was posted for 6. So let's get out of public session.
Well, we never went into it.
Yep. All right. Yeah, we'll save that for 7 o'clock then. All right. So then I'm going to start with our discussion regarding the SRO position. So as many people know, we had a lot of discussion, a lot of opinion, and we have a lot of the citizens in town concerned, okay, about some incidents that have happened, and I think that Chief Cudmore, Carol and staff did a wonderful job last week at the safety meeting and having that discussion with our citizens. But this is a meeting that we want to have further discussion regarding a possible additional SRO, as we have one in town already. A lot of the town has expressed their concern and desire to have that extra SRO in place. So, Chief, why don't you come up, if you could, please? Okay, and we can have, I was going to say, and then Carol, why don't you come up as well, please? And, and then Barbie, why don't you come up as well, if you could, please? And this is going to be an open discussion, with some fact, and we're going to have an open discussion about the possibility of putting this new SRO in place sooner than later as well. And certainly, at the end of it all, any board members, if you have any questions, we will get to those questions as well. Okay, Steve, can you hear us? Okay.
He's mute. You got
just
to
wanna
unmute
make sure.
first.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. All right, fantastic. So I'm going to start, Chief. You've done extensive research. You've given us some extensive information, on the potential of bringing in a new SRO, reasoning behind it, functionality, of the new SRO. So why don't we start with you? Maybe you can provide some information to the public on what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Sure. Good evening. I think we would probably want to start with what originated back in 2004 when we had a full-time SRO position that was funded by a federal grant. I had written at the time when I was a sergeant a federal grant for an SRO position for the town of Georgetown School District, and we were awarded that grant. It was a 3-year grant for $150,000, and then we, in order to receive the grant, had to agree to a 1-year retention, which we did. In 2009, as we all know, the economy in the entire United States hit the skid, so to speak, and the first thing to go was that position due to the fact that, each department had to relinquish some funding in order to balance the budget. So in the interim, myself and the superintendent attempted to have a liaison officer, and we did kind of a part-time situation where at least there was some connectivity between the police department and the schools. Then in 2007, we did that for at least 5 or 6 years. And, we had a variance of plans. There was a full-time officer working part-time hours. There was part-time officers splitting time. But eventually, we just found that the need was too great, given the climate. And in 2017, the community, the Board of Selectmen, and the FinCom allowed us to hire a full-time SRO position. The provision, though, to that position is that we provide an hour of traffic control in the morning and an hour of traffic control in the afternoon for Elm Street and East Main Street because of that situation down there involving the traffic and the congestion and the safety issues. So given that the school day is about 6 hours long, and trying an attempt to split that officer's time with that traffic post as well as the 3 schools in the district, specifically the size of the Pembroke, given there was a grade configuration change. We just don't have the time to commit that one person, that one body, to any full-time capacity in the high school or the Pembroke. We do the best we can, and then in light of circumstances that occurred in the last month or so, especially the national climate, for all intents and purposes, and the public has demanded upon me as well as the superintendent that we provide more security to our school district. And so to take action and to be able to formulate a plan, a definitive plan, a sustainable plan, I had proposed after last week's forum with the parents and the numerous emails and tweets and Facebook posts, both positive and negative, that if this community wants a school resource officer, then we need to dedicate that officer to those particular schools. I would take the current officer right now and dedicate them to Pembroke. They would live down there. They would stay there day in and day out. I would have them connected computer-wise to the department so they stay at the building. That becomes their post, and then I would do the same with this new officer at the high school. There's no other way to provide the security that was desired at that meeting that I was at the public forum last week with the superintendent, and the information that I've received from the public, to think that we can have one officer trying to divide their time in between those 3 buildings. It's not going to work. So I proposed that at our meeting, and I provided a bit of a matrix for cost. There's about 3 months left in this fiscal year, so obviously those costs would be relative to the end of the fiscal year and the beginning of the new fiscal year. And then included in that are the security enhancements that need to be made to our buildings. I think it was evident in that forum, a couple of the selectmen were there, that the buildings are not compliant with at least minimum safety standards and security standards for what's going on across the nation relative to school violence, relative to gun violence. So that's kind of a 5-minute dissertation on what we did. And again, we're tasked, and I have police there every single day at the schools, but it's costing me overtime money. I'm holding shifts over so that we can have that coverage. People like the coverage, and I like the coverage. I think it's been very well received, but like everything, there's a cost to that. And that, I built the budget last December for this fiscal year, and so there was no speak of that. The adequacies of this school resource officer as we see it today, you know, if I had to put a percentage, and I was actually tasked with that, to say that, you know, the officer's spending probably 40% of their time at the Pembroke, probably only 20% of their time at the high school, and then in between those variances, obviously, when school is not in session, the program's successful because I use them for traffic saturation enforcement, and we were able to actually statistically reduce some of our traffic complaints during the summer months because I had an extra officer out there doing what they can do to help our residents in probably got 17 problematic areas throughout the community, and I would do the same with the additional officer and take some of the relief off the current, excuse me, the reserve force that I have. I mean, we're approaching 18 reserve officers to run the department. I have more part-time people than I do full-time people. So I would like to take those SRO positions once school is out for the summer and realize that they can be utilized in a standard patrol setting for the community. Putting people on shifts so that I reduce the number of sick calls, fillbacks, and mandatory call-ins for full-time officers and reduce overtime. So, I mean, you know, again, it's a three-legged stool approach that I have for every position that we have, but, you know, it's worked in the past, and I think it can work in the future. But it costs money.
Right, okay. Chief, I know you had mentioned that there are statistics, you know, pertaining to the amount of kids compared to how many, you know, officers we have in the schools. Okay, can you enlighten us on that?
Well, it's more in line with the population of your community.
Okay.
FBI standards is 2 full-time officers per 1,000. We have
1,400.
What's that?
1,400 total.
Well, no, not students, I'm talking population.
Oh, population,
Just a little
okay.
under 9,000. So, you know, I have 11 full-time officers plus myself. And obviously, it's nowhere near what that standard would hold. I don't think we need 18 full-time officers. But there are communities smaller than us that have more full-time officers. And prior to that addition of the SRO, the police department hasn't added to staff since 1999. We're still the same police department we were 20-something years ago. So that additional officer, the department and the services have grown exponentially. The full-time staff has not. So I backfill it with part-time officers. But they come here, they receive great training. We have a great community. We have a great police department. So, you know, my people are very popular when they apply for jobs elsewhere. And, you know, I tend to lose a lot of my officers after I take 6 months in training them. I lose my reserve staff and I have to keep hiring. I'm going to be coming to you next month with another 3 appointments because I've lost 3 more.
Chief, do we have anybody in place right now if we did move forward with the SRO? The
Yeah.
additional SRO?
Under normal circumstances, when we hire a full-time officer from our reserve force, which has been our mantra because they're time-tested and we're able to get a feel whether they're a good fit for the community, I have an officer who was already full-time trained in the academy. So the 6-month training is eliminated. The $50,000 cost to put them through the academy, as well as the $4,000 academy fee, is not on the table. I could start this program tomorrow morning.
Okay. And it wouldn't cost the town any more money for that?
Just the salary for the person. And
Okay.
under normal circumstances, it takes 6 months to get a full-time officer certified through the Commonwealth with the MPTC. Currently, we have 2 officers in the academy because of a resignation and a retirement. So I'm running very short-handed as it is. I either need for the part-time officers because I have to backfill those full-time positions. I had a mid-year retirement within this fiscal year that was not budgeted for. People can elect to retire whenever they want, and a long-term employee retired last week.
Okay.
And I had a resignation in September as well, full-time.
All right. You know, we also have Mr. Ed Dorby in the audience from FinCom, so we're going to call Ed up in a little bit regarding funding this possibility. But you know, regarding the SRO and utilization, you know, Carol, maybe you can kind of enlighten us on what your thoughts are and how we're going to fully utilize
them.
you know, this SRO and whether we have, you know, full buy-in from the school on that.
Yeah. Well, typically what happens with the SRO is they're used for whatever needs to be done. For example, there's some plant security, right? So they're in and about around the building, they're doing those things like that. They're also working with students, right? So that's one of the goals of the SRO program, was to, you know, give students an opportunity to see police officers as really helpful and to build relationships with them. So, you know, we have the SRO. This one isn't teaching youth in the law, but at times we've actually had people SROs teaching. Henry, when he's at Pembroke, he does do a fair amount of teaching, like they did a certain number of assemblies on cyberbullying. He was working with the staff at the school on that. He's very helpful to the principals because, things will come up with discipline or there'll be something, that we need to follow up with, and he's very helpful in that way. So I believe that they would be well utilized. It wouldn't necessarily be, right now we're doing the minimum because as the chief said, we don't have much time available to the high school. Pembroke has been our focus, so to speak, in terms of what the need has been. So I know at the high school, he does a lot of connecting with kids during lunch periods. Or, if the principals call him in to do a consultation or they need him to follow up with something. So I just feel like it's, when we didn't have it, so as the chief said, we've had it for a long time in various iterations. At one point when it was the least successful was when, and again, I credit the chief for always making sure that there's support for the schools. But it was like the officer of the day, right? It was whoever was available to come by the school. It wasn't proactive, so to speak, because they were basically needed in town for other things. But if there was ever anything that we needed help with at the schools, there was no doubt that somebody would be there. What we weren't able to do was the proactive stuff, heading off situations before they became problems. It was more of a reactionary, and we're trying to be proactive. That's been our goal all along with the SRO program. Sometimes it is hard to quantify, although the chief, and I know for myself, I review reports that the SRO does, if he does follow up with things. But I know that the chief gets a report every time, Henry has anything in particular that he looks into. And I think that those reports would probably show that he's very busy. And as the chief said, I think the traffic detail has been terrific, but it does take a chunk of the day. So that is just less time he has available in the schools.
And I think from my perspective also, in 2012, when I started in this role, I brought NEMLEC to this community, the Northeast Law Enforcement Council, and with the NEMLEC program, it's basically a regional effort between 62 cities and towns where we share our assets. But the most important asset that I share, there's a SWAT team, there's an RRT team. I use and utilize the STARS program, which is School Threat Assessment team. And then I have an officer on the STARS team. That officer also is available, and it's not the SRO, so that the SRO doesn't get pulled from the school. It's another officer that will travel to various districts in their time of need. They've been as early as 2 weeks ago over in Tewksbury and Methuen. They had some issues over there, and that team is readily available to respond to Georgetown in the event we do have a critical incident or we need support services, including counselors. We have a counselor that sits on our team that is a member of the superintendent's staff over at the high school guidance. So it brings a mix of law enforcement, emergency management officials, as well as school officials with regard to counseling for children during a crisis. We have that team. And obviously I am able to deploy that team whenever I want, and I'm in charge of the team. It's very different from most regional team concepts where if a team were to come into here, they're in charge of the team. We in NEMLEC, the chief is in charge of that team. Although you have a myriad of bodies from other communities, those are your people. They follow your lead. So they don't come in and take over your district. They don't come in and take over your community. You still have that home local control of your own police chief to manage that asset in case you need it. And that comes with all kinds of tools if we need a rapid response team or anything like that. If we needed to secure, we have utilized them in some of, we had a couple of tragedies that some folks have endured over at the high school, and I did call on the STARS team. But at the level of school threat and assessment, if we needed equipment, whether it be metal detectors if we have a firearm incident, or we need to lock a building down and then clear a building, we have that asset available 24 hours a day. And we, as the chiefs of these cities and towns, going all the way to Natick up into North Andover, and we sit in a very good location because the team operates out of North Andover, so their response is quick, and all of our surrounding communities have members in NEMLEC. So that's another asset that we bring. And that will just further strengthen our SRO program as well, because I will keep that officer in that role, but also expanding our SRO program. Given the climate of today, I mean, you know, the disorder that we're suffering both politically with gun safety. We now see our students are getting involved in the political arena, as you saw this weekend. That is all very taxing on the school district and in law enforcement. We need to keep those relationships open and that bond extremely, extremely close, because we possibly could deal with something like that at that level. So that's just one more avenue. Florida just recently enacted a $500 million initiative where they're putting an SRO in every public school building. And Mass chiefs, international chiefs of police have said as early as a week ago that if you have a population of a building in excess of 500 students, you should have an SRO in those buildings.
And we are launching an initiative called See Something, Say Something, where we're about to put in an app that, and already the school resource officer has received many opportunities to talk with students who, you know, have maybe been uncomfortable about things. So, you know, the goal is to have him be a fabric of the building, right? So that kids know how to access him, they feel comfortable accessing him. And that has begun to happen with Henry. He's been here, this is his second year, right, Chief? Yeah.
He'll end his second year at the end of this school year. And I guess what has prompted this as well is during the forum, you know, people have asked me, well, what are you doing about it? Well, this is what I need to do. You know, I'm taking what assets I'm given, whether it be full-time officers, part-time officers, and if you want action and you want change, this is what we need to do. And we could wait till the end of the fiscal year, we could wait till town meeting, we could wait, but people are asking me, why are you waiting? And I said, well, it's been brought to the attention of the executive branch of our government here in Georgetown. If that's important to our residents, important to our parents, then this is what we need to do.
Yep. Has the incoming new principal been notified that we're hoping to do this? And does he have
He has
pushback?
not, but he has an SRO in the building he's coming
he's
from,
familiar?
so
Okay.
he's familiar. And I mean, I think too, you know, when you look at cost-benefit analysis, I mean, some of the things that were shared at the forum, you know, with around metal detectors and then security people to do it. I mean, we did a cost for that because there were people who were asking, you know, what would that cost? So it costs about $250,000 to have, you know, metal detectors, just even if they're just on the front doors, the wands that go with them, and a security guard that would be working, you know, at each school. One guard that would do a morning, well, one would do a morning and one would do the evening if you wanna cover the building at night. We do have a lot of our students that are there at night because of sports, and the public uses the buildings a lot at night. So, you know, I mean, an SRO it won't do the same thing, but it's definitely a deterrent, right? Which is kind of what we've always said, is that we can't necessarily guard against everything. We're gonna do our best, but, you know, and the chief has always said, you know, if somebody's got a penchant to do harm, you know, they may be able to do it, but our job is to slow them down and make it difficult for them. And I think having an armed officer in the schools is a definite deterrent.
Sure. I also want to welcome the school committee here tonight. Chairman Linares is in front of us as well. What are you guys thinking, you know, about this?
Well, the school committee is in full support of an SRO and an additional one. We have been in support of that. You know, when we didn't have it, it was concerning. I agree with what the superintendent and the chief said in terms of the relationship that the SRO has with the children. You know, he's there to mediate situations. He's also there to teach. And it's concerning to me that he's not at the middle school as much as I think that he should be. And I get it that he just can't be all over the place. The traffic situation, you know, puts a stick in the spokes there. But he's done a great job there too. That morning traffic is difficult. Hearing the amount of concern that the people had at the forum, I think that an SRO in both schools would definitely put a lot of minds at ease, put a lot of children's minds at ease. The kids, when they see the police officers at the school in the morning or in the afternoon or even during the day, like when I was a kid, I would be concerned. These children now are excited to see them because of the relationship that they have. And it just gives them more security. You know, we don't want our kids to go to school afraid that something could happen, and we certainly don't want the parents to be concerned that when they say goodbye to their kids in the morning, that there's a possibility that they won't come home. We want to do everything that we can to ensure the community that we understand their concern and that we want to hear what they're saying and do as much as we can. This community is, I love this community. And the amount of support that we get from the parents, from the different departments, from the different committees, I just think it's a service that we really need to provide right now.
All right. So what I'd like to do is open it up to the board with any questions. I would ask not to get into the money as of yet. Again, we're going to call Ed up in a little bit. But are there any questions regarding the SRO position in general? Go ahead, David. You can start here and then we'll go on.
Just a comment rather than a question. I think if we proceed with this, I think this is an opportunity for us to get some help in the summertime when the schools are not in session. We've
That's
had
correct.
considerable issues at the parks, right? Not only American Legion, but we're going to be putting another park online on East Main Street at some point. So I think this, people would say, well, it's just during the school year. I think we have an opportunity to really to beef up our police force and making sure that everybody's doing the right thing. With those parks.
We've had this, we spent 2 years ago almost $9,000 dealing with the ALB, and I know I've worked with the Park and Rec to try and give them coverage for various concert series. I am not a believer, and I think people have known, I don't like to charge our community police details if they're having a charitable event. It's counterproductive to the charitable event if you're paying to have police available at that venue. So I attempt to do it within my budget. We have now, if it's something that's a for-profit situation, some of our bike races and things like that, although they're charitable, they're run by organizations that are for-profit. But when we're having events for our community, the concert series and things like that and other events, I try to use duty officers. When you only have 2 on duty for the entire day, you're thin, you're running thin. So I would take those SRO officers, and we'd have a complement of officers during the day, the early night, and on the midnight shift as well, to take some of the burden off that scheduling and increase our patrols. That's
On the weekends.
on the weekends, absolutely.
Down the-
Because officers don't work Monday through Friday.
Right.
Although the SRO does. In the summertime, when they're off that SRO assignment, they go right back to a 4 and 2. They work 4 days on, 2 days off. So they never have the same day off twice.
Yeah. So that's a byproduct of this, I think, that would certainly help in another area also. So I'm in full support.
Okay. Doug?
I have a couple of questions. One, Chief, so Carol and Bobby, we're looking for one additional SRO?
That's correct.
Okay. And with the Officer Olszewski directing traffic at Elm Street, is there a particular reason why we couldn't have an additional school crossing guard at that intersection?
Crossing guards aren't authorized to direct traffic. The only reason a crossing guard can enter a crosswalk with a stop sign is because the law states that if there's a human being in a crosswalk, a vehicle has to stop. Crossing guards are not supposed to direct traffic. I know sometimes I see them out there attempting to assist, but they're training. They're trained every year in August. They're not authorized, nor should they attempt to direct traffic. So a crossing guard cannot direct traffic at that post.
They're also difficult to find.
What's
They're
that?
also
Crossing-
difficult to find.
Yes, I'm down a crossing
Crossing
guard
guards.
right now.
Yeah.
Have been for almost a year.
I'll say that.
No.
Oh, I thought that was
That's This is directed towards Carol. Other than having an armed guard in the school, what are your expected outcomes from having the SROs there? I mean, I understand what you said, but is there, what's the final moving goal?
Well, it's always a goal to have schools be safe, right? So to have a deterrent is important. I think that's to see less, less risk, lower our risk. I also think that it's a goal to have the students see community officers, as assets to their community, and to see resources for them. When a student sees an officer and feels comfortable going up and telling them, something that they want them to know about, something they might be concerned about, there's a benefit to that as well. So I definitely feel like that's an outcome, that the relationship between law enforcement and students in school is a positive. As Barbie said, I think the benefits to the staff and to the parents is they have this sense of safety and security when they know that there's someone physically in the building, that if someone, wanting to do harm came in, that is trained and would be hopefully available to be there. Because as the chief always says, it takes them some time to get to the school in the event that something were to happen. So I think it just makes everybody feel better that there's someone physically there that at a moment's notice could address a situation that might be concerning.
Well, it's a sad state of affairs
I know.
for our society that we've come to this point. We seem to have lost our moral compass and a complete lack of respect for life. It really is very disturbing.
It's very disturbing.
And and I also know that, as to tag on to David's statement, that come the summertime and vacations, that the chief is able to utilize that additional person for additional policing within the community.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're all here and putting that forward, and thank you.
You're welcome, Doug.
Steve, you have a question?
I do. It's more of a logistics. I don't know if this should be directed towards the superintendent or school committee, but I do know in other towns, other communities, the SROs are permanently in the schools, and that means they have, an office in there. They have all the computer devices that they need, all of that good stuff. I guess the question is, if we do have an SRO in the two schools, are we planning to provide them with what they need to be successful, or how's that going to work?
Yes, when we've had folks in the SROs in the schools before, they've always had access to an office. I know for a while we used a space in Pearlie because they're district personnel, so to speak. But if we were to have one in each school, we would need to be prepared to give them a place to be, because obviously it doesn't do any good to say that we want one in each school and then put them at Pearlie. So, we have worked with the chief in the past to make sure that they've had access to the network and computers, and they had a designated phone. So we would certainly need to plan on those logistics.
They have access. Does that mean their own office, their own devices, or does that mean that it's like a hoteling type thing where they, if an office is open, that they're able to go in?
No, again, we have to work out those logistics, Steve, but in the past, when we've had SROs that have spent time in the schools, they have had a designated place where they could work.
I think part of it's important that if in fact these officers are transplanted into those buildings, I will certainly work with the superintendent so that they have computer access, because right now they have to leave the building to get access to our servers, to get access to be able to interview a parent or a child, and it would be better obviously if we just keep them in the building so they're in the building. And I think the superintendent and I will be able to work that out. I mean, those are educational institutions. I'm sure there's a computer and tablets and the like and phones that we can probably maneuver and like you say, get those logistics nailed down so that we're in good shape.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the only question I have, but I fully support this. I think for me it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
Thank you,
That's all I
Steve.
have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Gary, have anything?
I'm trying to understand, now this is SRO discussion, but also in the packet, we have a letter from Chief Cudmore dated March 15th asking for 2 additional officers. So were these 2 separate?
Reduce it to
things?
1 at the meeting during our presentation. I mean, ideally, in the strategic plan that I had put forth with Phil Trapani's group, I was asked and tasked with putting together what the police department would look like in 2020. And included in that was adding an officer in FY 18 and 19, and then in 20, we would have the full complement for the PD. So in moving forward with that, that is just in line with, I try to keep the plans sequential so that they're moving, so I'm not all over the place. However, given the cost to accomplish this goal, this particular goal, since we already have an SRO, one officer would suffice. Two's a big feat.
Yeah. Well, two's a big feat along with the other improvements that
Exactly.
we'll
So,
talk about in a second as well.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
And so, at some point, what, you just mentioned other improvements, because that was the other
Correct.
line I wanted to go down. So we'll be
Yep.
talking about the physical improvements.
If we're done with the SRO, then we're gonna dive right into that, as well.
It's just, yeah, I'd have to know more, which, as you said, you asked to hold off on the funding. I mean, it's difficult to say no, but we've also got the responsibility of other responsibilities other
Sure.
than just the schools, so.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Pam Lundquist from the school committee, and I just wanted to quickly add that Officer Olszewski has also committed himself to educational prevention kind of assemblies that I've attended. This last fall, he spoke with the students at the high school. Let's see, one was on cyberbullying, sexting, and vaping. And then he also had another educational assembly where he brought in people from CBS and they discussed the opioid crisis.
That's true.
And that, so he really is educating students at the high school to the, greatest degree he can, but he doesn't have enough time to do more.
Sure.
But when he does have the time, he puts in that effort, and that's another way that the students really benefit and they get to know him, and he lays down, he helps them understand consequences, he helps them understand, the context, and he's just, he's done a phenomenal job whenever I've seen him.
Yeah, that's a good point,
at the
Pam.
high
Thank
school.
you.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. So if there are no other, any other comments from the board? No? All right, so Chief, maybe you can, get into the upgrades to the high school as well, because I think that is also, part of, really securing our schools. SROs, kind of the first step, but we have to do something at that entranceway at the high school as well.
Well, what I'll do is also too, the superintendent and I have met obviously extensively in the last 2 weeks, but in preparation for this meeting too, we had kind of a 5-phase agenda that we wanted to bring forward, and we'll get to the enhancements because the enhancements are number 2 on that list. But immediately we were hoping to create a school safety task force, schools, police, security experts, and the public, so that people, what resonated to us is people didn't know what we do. And obviously there are certain things that we can share and certainly things that you don't want to share your playbook with the bad guy, right? So, but we do want people to be actively involved. There are a lot of people out there with a lot of good ideas. So we immediately said, let's form this task force once this meeting was going to occur. Secondly, we want to implement the security enhancements to the schools, including anything that would be on the table from that task force, including this very expensive proposal relative to metal detectors, if that's what this community wants.
Right.
Third, immediately hire another SRO for the high school coverage. Fourth, create a district school safety plan, a definitive plan. I mean, we have one right now. I think that was the piece of, and this component that was missing is there is an active safety plan. However, people are looking for details, and the district and myself will create a district school security and safety plan that will be reduced to writing. So that maybe with our task force recommendations and also to Governor Deval Patrick's task force, which was also completed a couple of years ago before Governor Baker took over, has a lot of information in that we have already instituted. And then fifth, a lot of people are talking about our communications and the lack thereof, whether it be the disconnect between the town, the police, the schools, and maybe it's time that this community look at having a public relations firm deal with the Associated Press, connecting Facebook at all levels, Twitter, text and app, Blackboard Connect, see something, say something, click fix. What is it, Mike? Click fix? See click fix. There's a lot of acronym now, so I'm starting to lose them, but all of that communication needs to be somehow put into a folder. And right now, they're not connected, so that's part 5 of this plan, because that's vital to the plan as well. as far as safety and security enhancements. I'll turn it over to the superintendent, she has a report that Mike Anderson worked on, and I can certainly fill in as we go, since it was a team effort.
Sure. So one of the things we identified over February vacation in the aftermath of Parkland, it's always an opportunity when something like this happens to see what lessons can be learned. And then we meet monthly as a safety team anyway, but for this particular discussion about, how safe are our schools, particularly in two ways, are the entrances to the schools, and once the students are in the classrooms, how are we making sure that they're secure there as well. Metal detectors, honestly, were not part of our initial discussion, but as the chief said, our goal is to, put forth, at least a cost for the things that people are saying. If that's the will of the town, then we certainly want to work with the town to keep the schools as safe as possible. But on our plan that we're planning to do immediately, and the school committee's had a chance to review this as well and approved it, the middle high school, when you come to the door, there's a buzzer. So one of the things we ordered today, actually, are plates that clearly ask people to identify, who you are, what you're there for, and to be prepared to show an ID, which is going to be a fairly significant change to the community because they're not necessarily used to being asked to do that. Those will be affixed to the buzzers so that when someone comes to the buzzer, they'll know when the secretary or whoever's answering the buzzer will ask them to identify themselves. Again, that hasn't necessarily been done. If the secretary recognizes somebody, they just, kind of buzz them in. But now people are going to be asked to identify themselves and what they're there for, and they will be asked to show an ID. So you buzz yourself in. So right now when you come in, you can likely go straight down toward the cafeteria, the gym, or you can go up toward the office. We have stanchions that direct people during the day to go up to the office, and people are generally very compliant with that. But if it were if we were to find that there was somebody who, wasn't interested in being compliant because they had other ideas on what they wanted to do, they could easily just have access to the school by running down the hallway. So over April vacation, what we're going to do, because we are hoping to get some funds, because a lot of these things we're talking about do require funding that neither the chief or we have in our budget at this moment in time. However, there are some things in that entrance that we can do fairly quickly. We do have some metal, see, Mike was here, he'd have the right words, but the supports, metal supports that we used when we did the walls and the doorways in the senior center. Because as you remember, our guys did a lot of that work. So we do have some of those left, and if somebody asks, are they stable, are they secure enough, they're very secure. Then what will happen is we will buy out of our maintenance budget some sheetrock, the sheetrock that we need. So when you first come in the door, instead of that hallway being open, there will be a wall that will go floor to ceiling. And there will be a security door in the middle. Obviously, there's a panic button so you can come out, but you can't go in unless you're buzzed in by the secretary, because there will be a buzzer system that will be put, in place there. So now you can't go that way unless the secretary buzzes you in. So now you're going to go up the hallway toward the office. Again, we're putting another wall. It won't be a floor to ceiling wall because that hallway was not designed to have an obstacle in the middle of it. So the sprinkler systems and the airflow and all of that. So we're going to put it, I think it's going to be 8 feet. So no one's going to be scaling it, but it's not going to be all the way to the top, and it'll be just on the other side of the office door. So you have to stop at the office because again, that door is going to have a wall with a security door and a buzzer system on it. So you come to the desk. That's going to be closed in, except there'll be a window, like you might see at the dentist office or something, where it can be opened. That actually will be made of hurricane glass. And then the office secretaries, I met with them on Friday. They're asking if maybe, like you go to the bank, there's one of those little things that David will know, one of those little...
We've done away with all of them, but that's all right.
Oh, you have? Well, here's why. Well, it's like the tray that you might put your deposit slip in.
Yeah.
Largely because they're saying that a lot of things that get brought to the school are just, they're just forms that somebody's turning in. They don't really have any other business, with the school than that. So we can talk about whether that makes sense to do, but that was the secretary's wish. And so what will happen is they'll come to the window and they'll, you know, obviously do their business. And then depending on what they're there for, they'll get buzzed into the appropriate door. So, and there'll be no magnets, you know, if you're at Pearlie and you go down the stairs at Pearlie, as long as you get in proximity, there's a magnet or something that the door will open. Like you could be on the other side and it'll open even though no one's really let you in. That won't, we're eliminating all of those in every single door in the district that has that function. But so we won't be putting that in the middle school. You have to be buzzed in and then you'll go through the doors. Let's see, anything else there? So what will happen over April vacation is the guys that are gonna do it are gonna put up the frames, they're gonna cut the doors, they're not gonna buy you can't purchase the doors, but they're gonna put the door frames in, so that literally all we'll have to do is hang the doors once we get the money. I think that's important, we feel that's important because people, as the chief said, are asking, what are you doing, right? So the fact is we can do that over April vacation and then people can physically see that, you know, we're making, you know, improvements. The other thing we would like to purchase is something called Lobby Guard. So when you come in and you go to the office, you have to show your ID and you put it, there are different kinds of versions, I'm not sure exactly what version, but you show your ID. It runs it automatically through the sex offender registry. And then it produces a badge that you wear that has your picture on it. So as you're buzzed into the school, everybody knows who you are. And it also, because it's all electronic, it keeps a detailed record of all the times everybody's been in the building. So if we ever needed to go back and do any kind of a check, it's not the papers that you sign in now that, you know, when the book's full, what do you do with it, right? It'll be a lasting record. So that's what we want to do with the entrance at the middle high school. In terms of Pearlie, so Pearlie has two ways in, as you know, the front door and then the kiosk door. It's impossible to actually secure the front door when you come in and you come up the stairs. Right now you can go anywhere you want. You don't have to go all the way to my office if you don't want to comply with what we ask you. And the problem is once you do that, you can go anywhere you want in the building, including down to the preschool and have access to the kids. We don't want that. We've looked at ways that we could figure out how to make that more secure, but the doors that go down the stairs, which we would close normally, they're fire doors, and they don't open the right way. So it's not like we could do something to those doors and make them more secure. They really aren't an option. So what we're going to do is keep that door locked. Obviously, we're directing everybody to the kiosk during the day. So in the kiosk, so the secretary's office is right there. She sees everybody that comes to that entrance. And so what's going to happen in her office, her door is going to be locked, and we're going to put a window in for her as well, so that, because the question is, how would she be safe, right? So we need to protect her as well. So there'll be a window similar to the middle high school that she can talk to people and do her business, but her door will remain locked, unless she chooses to let people in. There are two sets of double doors, so if you can remember when you go into Pearlie, you can go toward the classrooms or you could go toward the central office. That's kind of the best way I can explain it. So those doors will be shut and locked, and there'll be a buzzer system on both sets of those doors. So now the same thing happens. You come into the kiosk, you cannot go anywhere. You can go to the secretary and, you know, deal with her, and then she will sign you in. Hopefully we'd have Lobby Guard there as well. She'll sign you in, and then she'll buzz you in. So if it's somebody coming to see me, she'll buzz them into the central office. They'll come up. If she buzzes them that way, it's all into the school. And that's the only time you can go to the school, is if you're buzzed in. On the other end of down there where the senior center is, the same thing will happen. Those double doors will be locked, and there'll be a fob on them. And actually, starting a couple weeks ago, we actually moved the lunch operation for the little ones down into the gym. So half of the gym is now set up during lunchtime. So actually everything is locked down. There's nothing, nobody can get in that we don't want to get in where the children are. If you're up in the central office and you want to go down to the preschool, we're going to put a buzzer system on there, and my secretary will be the one that buzzes you down. So you can come up from the preschool, but you can't go down to the preschool if you're in the central office.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Yep.
So when you go from that kiosk up towards the, to your office.
Yes.
There is, so the gym is on your right,
Correct.
and then there's a stairwell going down to some bathrooms and some classrooms, I think the music room. So what are we gonna do with that entrance? What will we do with that? Because that takes you right down and you can go
So,
to the gym.
So let me talk about that with
Okay.
people. I think that the goal was to make sure that if you were careful about who got in the doors initially, that we were less worried about that, because they'd be somebody that had already gone through security. They'd already gone through the secretary and been buzzed in, and they've gone through the lobby guard. But that is a good, I don't think we.
Because that still will give them access, because
Yeah.
once they get into the gym,
Right, they can go down. So let us think about that.
Okay.
That's the first time we were asked that question, so that's a good question. And then the other thing that we're doing is that there are panic buttons, in all of the offices, by the desks where people, come in. And so that's all gonna be tied into the fire alarm system. So it is at Pembroke, because we put in state-of-the-art security when we built the new school. But the other two buildings do not have that feature. So what would happen is when somebody pushes the panic button, fire doors, close. So it would be intended to stop someone if they were running through the halls, and they were, it would be a deterrent if nothing else. In terms of the Pembroke, in terms of the access to the building, when we built that school, we built it specifically, we designed it specifically so that community spaces would be separate from the main school, right? Remember in the old Pembroke, once you went in the front door, there was nothing that deterred you. So when we built that school, we said, if the public's gonna use the building, they're gonna use the side entrance, unless there's something that they really need the front door to be open for. So when Mike Anderson, approves permits, if you're gonna use the gym, then everything else will be locked. All the wings for the classrooms will be locked, but also the cafeteria will be locked. So you'd be able to use the gym and the bathrooms. Same thing if you were using the cafeteria, and you don't need the gym door will be locked and you'll have access to the cafeteria. We're trying to restrict, we're trying to restrict the access. If you're there for a certain space, that's the space you should be in. You shouldn't be anywhere else. And then in terms of the front door, now the other night, I was telling the school committee and others that, I went for an event at the little black and gold dinner, blue and gold dinner. And, there were tons of little kids and their parents, and the door was propped wide open, right? So I know why, I get it, all these people coming in, it's hard when the door's locked. But if I were somebody who wasn't intending to do good things, it wouldn't have been very hard for me to do some harm. So, we're directing everybody that you can't leave the door open. In fact, one of the things we're doing with this panic system is if the door is ajar, there'll be an alert. It'll go to the custodian, it'll go to Mike Anderson, it'll go to the office. So we really need to impress upon people that it's for everyone's safety, that the doors can't be propped open.
Sure.
And then if you're going to use the library, the same thing happens. You come into the lobby, you can go up to the library, but all the classroom wings will be locked, the cafeteria will be locked. So there's not really any place you can go, because that's important. In terms of the classrooms, one of the things, and I think actually Steve Sadler showed us this, we've been researching, so we teach Alice, right? So if the students are taught, or the students and teachers are taught to barricade, that's one of the options if you can't get out. And so rather than rely on the skills of people in a panic situation, perhaps, to barricade correctly so that no one could get into this building, the classroom doors are supposed to be kept locked. The teachers know that that's the case. But we also want to purchase this thing called Night Guard, which is a device. I don't think I have a picture of it. It's a device that there's a plate on the floor, and then there's a device that hooks onto it, and so all the teacher has to do is literally step on it or push a button, and it just locks it. So it would provide security. So we don't have to worry about, some people have sleeves, some people have different kinds of devices. Everybody would have the night lock, and we would put it on all of the doors, in all of the schools, to just have that, that extra added security. And then one of the things that we're also, the chief, several years ago, we set up an arrangement with the police department and the schools where there are cameras at the there's cameras throughout the school. The schools, all of our schools have.
The entire district.
The entire district has really beefed up our camera presence. But we also have them in locations in the schools where we can actually see, every location where we have a camera. But we also have the same thing at the police department. And so, right now, we've got two servers and two big screen TVs that they can watch the cameras or follow up or check something out that they might need to. So what we need to do is provide one more so that each of the schools will be covered. So
We're sharing a server
we're
right
sharing.
now.
Server or?
Yeah, it's part of the plan,
Yeah,
just so that we can enhance that. Pembroke is a different technology than our other schools because obviously Pembroke just went online, newer technology. The other two schools are combined, and we would be able to separate that so that they would be more functional. And we would also enhance the entrance security cameras for the new updated high school lobby area,
right.
so that it can be user-friendly with the new configuration. We have to move some things around to ensure that that works cohesively together.
And following the forum, people, had brought up the notion of the metal detectors. And so, again, that wasn't something that we were necessarily planning on or recommending, but, in order to just be as complete as we can be, we did research what that would cost if we put the detectors on the front doors, the kind that you just walk through, and then if something were to trigger it, the wand that you would double check with, and then, of course, that is not a function of the SRO, it's not a function of the secretary, it's not a function of the assistant principals, so you need somebody that's gonna operate that. So, there would have to be security guards. We're researching, just because everybody wants the information, we're researching, if we were to have our own guards, in the town versus contract it out. And there are services that do that. So that's something we're still researching.
I think there's a fear for folks. I mean, you can't turn a school into a prison. It's a public
right,
building.
exactly.
It's a place of learning. I mean, we all went to school. We know what it's about. At the same time, we've been asked to reduce and minimize risk and be proactive in potential security breaches or lack of security in our building. So, these are not the first time that we've talked about these plans through capital improvement and through various security meetings throughout the years. We've always needed this plan for the physical buildings, and then obviously enhancing the SRO program is just another added feature for us, for the community, to be proactive and want to minimize and reduce the risk of potentially something bad happening in our school district.
Because safety does come first, right? That's something we all believe in, and we always have been. That's why the school committee, the police department and the school district have always placed safety as our highest priority.
Okay. So, thank you for all of that information. We do have to kind of get to the funding piece of this, which I know is a big part of it as well. So, Mr. Dovey, will you come forward?
Certainly. Come on down.
Public hearing on the bags, you got it one time. 7, right?
Carol, Chief, is there a document with all
Well, you
the,
can't start before 7.
Document with
with
what?
with all the items that you were talking about?
Yes, here.
I don't know.
Janet, could you pass that? Oh, here, wait a minute.
I was utilizing this document. that
Yeah,
we
that's
got.
a little bit of a summary.
You feeling better?
That's got the
Good.
cost, Doug.
And thanks for coming up. I appreciate you, attending tonight. This is a vital, piece of this, certainly. So first and foremost, if we could, separately, and let the public know, how much money are we talking about, for the SRO, both for the 3 months and then for, a full year? Let's start with that.
Go ahead, Carol, you go first. I'll get mine.
Well, okay, so you want to know about the security measures? And
You're gonna start with the security?
well,
first?
He's telling me.
Nope.
Okay, you ready?
You
SRO.
want to do labor first?
No, yeah, that's what they want,
Okay.
the labor first.
All right, so, I mean, for an annual cost, just salary for the SRO, with the base pay and the contractual obligations for the officer, you're looking at about $76,000.
Okay. And then we gotta figure benefits in there, right?
What's it fully loaded?
That's correct.
That's fully loaded?
Yes, sir.
With benefits?
With benefits, chief?
No, not
No,
with benefits.
right.
Because,
What do you mean fully
Yeah.
loaded with
well,
everything?
the fringe benefit cost would be depending on healthcare choice, single versus family.
What's the worst case scenario?
Average, yeah.
Well, the average range was from 76 to 108, depending on what they pick.
That's what we'll
Take
say.
the high number?
108. Yeah, you gotta take the high number. Okay. So, 108 is the yearly number. If we're looking at the few months, I came up with somewhere around 19, is that right?
For just salary?
19 out
Yeah.
of 76.
No, I wouldn't think that.
No? Did I do that wrong, man?
26.
For both? Or just salary? What would you like
It's only
to?
about a quarter.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do both.
One's already in the budget though, right?
Yeah, one's already in.
It's only about 3 months, right?
Yeah, so divide 4,
8 times.
so about 27.
About 27.
Okay, so we're looking at 27
You're a
for-
banker, sir.
No, Michael's
No, the
already had the
rest.
answer behind it.
Yeah.
School committee, they're much smarter than us. Michael had the answer in
I
2
do
minutes.
okay in math.
10 seconds. Bang, done.
See, I just did the salary, Mike. Thank you.
That's why we
I
keep-
kind of corrected that. All right.
So, may I ask a question? Or do you want to continue?
If I could just continue, I want to put both on the table. So we're looking at 108 for the year. We're looking at 27 for the rest of the year. And then we're looking at what on the repair side or the upgrades?
Assuming that our
88,000?
guys do it, it's 88,846 with a recurring cost of 10,700 each year.
Okay. All right. All right, Doug, go ahead.
So, Chief, you already have an officer that's hired that you're thinking of utilizing for SRO?
Yeah.
So then you would be looking to hire a new officer to replace that officer, no?
No, it's currently a reserve officer.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, so my reserve force obviously can sustain. They leave, they come and go every day. So the reserve officer would just become a
Right,
full-time
right.
officer, and then, I continue my quarterly hiring of part-time officers.
Okay.
So technically, we would have to subtract 27 from what she's already getting, right? Because this
Position
no?
doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, okay.
Great.
Yeah, but isn't she already getting paid though?
She's a per diem officer, so your reserve
Oh.
officers don't have regularly scheduled
Right,
shifts, they're
okay.
just filling
Yep.
in.
With
Yeah.
another.
Yep, okay.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay. All right. So the question is, we'll start with the SRO. Where do we get, the money, at least for the, for the few months that we're looking at? Do we have anywhere, that we can kind of dive into?
The answer is it depends.
Thanks for clarifying here.
I was going to say, it depends on what Mike says.
It depends how you're looking at it short term or you're looking at the big picture.
Well, we're gonna have to look at both.
Right.
So,
Exactly. So I tend to look at the big picture. That's what I get paid to do. The short version is we can pay for the security upgrades at the Springtown meeting, the Springtown meeting, not the annual town meeting. Special town meeting. Special Springtown. And we can pay for it out of the capital fund. There's $104,000 in that fund. The free cash is, okay, and then there's the reserve fund, which is 152,426. But you can't spend money for the school out of that reserve fund. It's a line item in the town budget. So you cannot spend any money out of that
So that's out.
budget.
How about, but it's police, it's not
Right.
schools.
Yeah, you can,
It's town.
yeah. But you have to look at all our needs as well. Free cash has taken quite a hit. As of last Friday, we're in $251,000 in deficit, leaving us just shy of 300,000 for the, and we could probably count on 50,000 of unpaid bills.
Okay.
So we're at the 300,000 in, we should count our deficit at 300,000 right now. Where we come up with the money for the SRO, yeah, you can take it out of the reserve fund.
But that puts us dangerously low on that, and if we did our free cash, it would be dangerously low.
Yeah, it would wipe both categories out, just about, and not leave us any funds for anything else.
However, doesn't reserve fund reloads July 1,
It does,
so
but at not at anywhere near this level. It's at, right now,
75, is it?
I think it's 95
95.
right now, but we may have to cut that even lower to balance the budget.
Right.
May I ask a question? In terms of warrant articles that I've seen, is it possible to put those on hold, postpone, or eliminate them for this year?
They can always be, that can always be done.
Because if you look at ATM 18-12, 18-19, 18-21, two of them are for trucks and one of them is for curtains or for the auditorium. That amounts to $127,950 that's coming out of free cash.
Yeah, we haven't discussed this at the finance committee
No.
level yet. This is what the CIP committee has recommended. If anything's untouchable, I would say at this point, for big ticket items, is the highway dump truck. That thing's on life support. I just talked to Peter about it today. That needs to be replaced. But we're looking at other security items that are high on the priority list too, most notably in the library and town hall. Our security system here ceased working years ago, and it just didn't make any sense dumping any more money into it because it's very old technology, first of all, and this plan is to upgrade both of the security systems for the library and the town hall would be on par with the new security at the schools and be able to be plugged into the police department as well. It's all compatible. My recommendation is to use the $100,000 in marijuana funds to pay for the SRO. That's a 5-year guaranteed stream of money.
We say guaranteed, we're gonna be cautious with guaranteed.
Legally guaranteed. They have to pay us.
Well,
If they're open.
yeah, exactly. You know, we don't, if they're not open, they're not paying any.
And when the other place opens, that's guaranteed $200,000.
Well, again, that's a very big hypothetical. I think we're counting on money here, Mike, that until it's in the bank account, I don't think we can count on it.
The other obvious discussion could possibly be an override. And my feeling is on that, if we look at an override, we look to package everything up the correct way. Instead of, we had already met with the chief about putting on 2 police officers. If we did this correctly, we could put the 2 police officers on, take care of the security, and also possibly do the security all in one fell swoop with the library and the town hall. But again, that depends on how the citizenry feels about the override. But I think, in terms of what took place in the tragedy in Florida, we have a unique opportunity here to do it right and do it quickly.
Some are an operational override and some are, so you have to differentiate between the two. I had mentioned on the 88,000, why not bond that? Rather than use available cash.
Well, then you're using available bond, aren't you?
We've got space to grow there if we want.
I know that, but that's not a huge amount to bond. It seems to me that we might be better off looking at something else as opposed to taking up that resource.
Right. Yeah, but again, spread it over maybe a 5-year short-term note where we're spreading the pain for the improvements over a 5-year
Right,
period.
but if you're looking at something that, we're looking at an override, that money will be there forever in terms of providing for what we want to take care of.
Not the 88. The operational override would.
I'm talking about the
SRO
improvements.
piece. Right. Well, I was talking the.
The salary.
Right. The salary would be in the operational override. If you're gonna, this 88,000, where cash in the short term is short, maybe we do a 5-year note. And then talk about how we're going to fund the 108,000 going forward.
Well, $100,000 in an override would add 8 cents to the tax rate.
Right.
Or approximately $34 to the hypothetical average home of $425,000.
Yeah, $34 for an average household.
That's Steve.
That's Steve.
So-
Like 425,000.
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't think you heard.
425, Steve, it'd be $34
Okay.
to the average tax bill, or 8 cents overall on the tax rate.
I think it's something we should consider because it doesn't take away any of our other financial flexibility.
Okay. I mean, this is the forum for discussion, right? We're throwing, this is good. We're throwing different options, out there, and if there's anybody else who has another option, to consider, we can, talk about that as well.
Joe, what would happen if the override doesn't pass?
Well, then we're back to square one, and that's something we'd really have to discuss, as a board. Karen, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand where we were. In a way, my feelings are, I'm not for any overrides. But if you really put it to the public to sort of answer the question, that would show just how much, we're here because we're saying that the people are demanding this. Well, they'd have to go out and demand it of their fellow citizens and get it passed, I guess. That would be my feelings on it. But I'd want to know, now I thought Ed threw a figure out there of 400 and something.
Hold on, Steve.
So I guess that's where I'm
400 something what? I'm not sure I made that.
thousand. I'm trying to figure out what would we be putting on an override? Would it be salaries for, permanent salaries for, let's say, two full-time police officers?
Well, and right now, conceptually, everything is open. It's a matter of.
Agreed.
It's a little premature to start putting money into.
Well, I thought I heard a number, 400 something thousand, okay.
108,000 for one police officer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm just throwing out, at some point, we have to look at all the options.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I'm the one that always ends up being the bad guy and says, either no, or we have to look at it this way.
Well, I personally look at that as possibly the best option to know what the public really wants and demands.
Well, I think that if the public doesn't want to pay for it, that doesn't preclude us from figuring out a way to pay for it. But obviously, my first choice would be, if the public wants it, the public has got to say, yes, we do.
But the school committee would be concerned if that did not pass, that there would be funds found somewhere. It's imperative that these funds be found somewhere. So if you're talking about an override, we still have to figure out, if that doesn't pass, where that money's
I
gonna come
would
from.
certainly think that we can find the 88,000 for the hard costs that you're talking about for the security upgrades. But it's adding on more salary. That's the difficult one going forward.
We've got to discuss the short term right now, because we've got to allow the chief to make a decision in terms of, do we move forward or not. That's the one thing I think, Mike, that we do have to discuss. Don't you agree? Because
Short-term,
in terms of transitioning the reserve officer to that position, because there's a possibility that we have an investment in that reserve officer that we could lose. Is that true,
That's
Chief?
absolutely true.
So where did two come from? Because I thought we had talked about two, and then Chief, you said one, and now we're talking about two.
I
just
mentioned
wanted to
two
know.
because the finance advisory committee was in full support of the original SRO. We jumped on that right away and approved it, and we got it done. And subsequently, we've met with the chief in terms of what happens in the future. We want to see a more professional, not that the force isn't professional, but as opposed to having so many reserve officers, we want more full-time police officers as the town's growing. And the world is changing, as you said. So the chief had come to us and he had recommended two. And
Okay, all right.
That's
I just.
It's a larger capital plan, and trying to tie it in with the strategic plan
Right.
and the steering committee that we had started back in 2016.
Chief, if we had the money to get you 18.
Oh, I know
full-time
that.
officers,
I'm aware of that.
I'd get it done.
Absolutely.
No, and we
Absolutely.
agree, but, we've got to start planning for it, and we've got to start coming up with contingencies in order to be able to accomplish it.
Yeah, okay. I was just got a little foggy on, it was two, then one, now we're talking two. and
No,
just know where it came
that's
from.
my personal opinion.
All right, then.
Short term, I know we're looking at the scope, okay, of, how we find this money, moving forward. Short term, if we start with the short term, can we just take that out of free cash? Do we have enough there? That we can just take it out of free cash, that 27,000?
That gets us down. If
well, we
everything is
wouldn't be able
approved-
to take it out until
Be a reserve
May
fund
7th.
transfer. Needs to be a reserve fund transfer.
No, I'm just talking about that short term, and then,
Well, the
yeah,
short term, 27,000 would be a reserve fund transfer.
we'd have to do it through reserves.
Because he needs the
Okay.
cash to carry him through this fiscal year.
All right,
Well, if you're talking town meeting, obviously there's money in there that I could use until it's replenished.
Right.
I would start it immediately, I guess, from what resonated with me and the public, and like I say, obviously a captured audience because it was our school district. People want to know what we're doing tomorrow, not what we're doing
Well,
in the next
agreed.
fiscal year, not next year, not in your fancy steering committee plan and portfolio. What are you going to do tomorrow? That's what they come to my office and they say, what about tomorrow morning you wake up, chief? What are you going to do? So I think when I say immediacy with regard to answering, my residents' questions and my duties as the police chief, I can say we'll wait till town meeting, then that's the answer. So when they email and they tweet me and they Facebook and they say, what are you doing today? Waiting till town meeting. That's the charge of the executive level of our government, and that's what I will do. That's why we put forth the plan.
yep.
Yeah, I would recommend we take it out of the reserve fund. The only problem is we're creating a structural deficit that we don't know that we can fund. I think that's for for us to figure out, but I think in the short term, as long as we can get a commitment from that officer to come, you know, with the guarantee that it's till July, you know, and we're working on trying to find the other funding. I think that, you know, that'll be our sale job, chief.
Yeah.
You know, in the meantime, you know, we have to figure out where we're gonna fund 108,000. How's the budget looking right now, Mike? Are we still negative? We still looking for money in the budget?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So then maybe we have to make some hard choices there too.
The unfortunate thing, though,
95,000.
We're already to the bone anyway, Ed, I know.
95?
I know exactly where you're going.
Well, why can't we fund the 3 months
Right.
and then
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
do the rest through the town meeting?
Just point of order. This is a vote of the 7 people on the finance committee.
Right, not us.
This is
Exactly.
not a selectmen's vote.
Right. We can recommend, but we can't.
we have a meeting on Wednesday, so if we reach
Tomorrow.
That's right, tomorrow. Yeah.
So Ed,
Sorry,
so,
I get confused.
Chair, if I could ask Ed a question on,
Absolutely.
do you think you have the support of your finance committee to,
Conceptually, I have to support. Finding the money might be another issue.
the short term, I mean, in this 27,000 to
Right,
fund?
but you just can't look at the short term. You've got to look at what comes on after that, too.
Yeah, because,
Right. Agreed. No, I agree. I get you.
just a question to that, I mean, we could possibly, if we short-termed it and then didn't find funds, we could then possibly be looking at unemployment costs, could we not?
Possibility.
It will be July though, so the schools will be closed, so maybe we can figure out something there by filling with that full timer and reducing some of the,
I just remember that year when we had
Part-time.
a lot of heavy,
Right.
you know, we had to lay
Right.
people off and it cost
Right.
us
Well, I think there's
close
ways
to
to-
half of what it would cost to have them here for
Right.
unemployment.
well, I think there's ways the chief can do that, I think. If he brings that full-time officer on, just cut back on
And,
his,
and we're attempting to reduce our reserve costs, so,
Right.
I mean,
So he's got
that,
the money
that
for it.
108 is I think that's a very large number on one side versus, you know, the potential savings of not having to utilize so many part-time officers throughout the year. There are some net gains in our original salary line item that I would be able to, like I do every year. There are many times when I've been able to, no, I pray in May. That's, everyone says, how does it happen? I pray in May. You know, that nothing bad happens and that we can get through to so that I don't have to hit that number.
Chief, which brings up the question, in terms of the reserve officer that we're looking at and the $27,000 that we would have to pay them through the balance of the time, do you have a number in your mind that you would have thought you would have ended up paying them anyway as a per diem?
It would only depend if I needed them to work. That's the unique thing about the reserve
Right,
officer.
but could
Yeah.
you say, well, geez, I probably would have used it, would have cost.
5 or 6
well,
shifts a month or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And how much would that equate to?
You know, $33,000 maybe, you know, through the course of using,
For
not
the-
just
are we
that one
talking-
officer,
are
no,
we
I'm talking
talking 3
the
months?
complement.
Or
Yeah.
each month?
3 months,
So we're down to 24.
yeah, you know. I mean, you know, in funding that 108 just in my budget, bringing that in, like I say, in reorganizing the schedule, there's cost savings in that salary line item too. You know, I'm able to cover that.
I will say that.
That's why in the matrix, it's difficult to, it's not a person who works Monday through Friday, you know, it's a
It's
complicated
hours. It's
salary.
man hours.
Yeah, it's a complicated salary figure within that contract
it's not to me.
because of the 4 and 2, 17 extra days in the year.
Right.
And I run shorthanded all the time. I'm shorthanded 3 full-time people right now. So, you know, we don't man the entire department at full complement all of the time because I have people out sick. I have someone out long-term. I got the retirement. So we're plugging and we're shifting and moving. And sometimes currently right now, your SRO is your day shift officer. I have to utilize them for patrol because I've run out of people. So,
And if we went down that road, by the way, of the override, have you guys thought about, you know, the complete package, what we're looking at, you know, what we would propose to the town?
No, we'd have to work with the schools and the police
That's what I mean.
department.
You don't have any
Come up
thought?
with a number, and obviously,
Okay.
we'd have to do it under the guidance of the town administrator.
And when would those funds be able to be captured? When would we have those funds if it was approved at town meeting?
Not in time,
About time now.
It's Jul,
It would be July 1.
so everything would have to be deferred until then, but we would still, if we were going to do that and were approved, the timing would still work out in terms of the short-term for the police officer.
Right, so we can put the short term, we can put the police officer in, and then July 1 comes along, and then we can fund that. If we want that.
If
Yeah.
we went that road and it was approved by the town,
Oh,
yes.
that's all right.
I mean, my concern is still that entrance into the middle high school. I know that over April vacation, we'd be doing that work, but we wouldn't have the doors
Right.
in place. So you'd have a structure there, but it's still not going to prevent anyone that is in there for business other than,
Okay, if we take it out of the capital fund at the special town meeting, you'll have the money on,
Next day.
May 8th.
If it was the regular, though, that we would.
right. So the special town meeting is able to be used the
Next
next
day.
day.
Right.
So this is doable, it's just a matter of how, the approach that we use.
I think,
And I still would like Mike's recommendation to be considered in terms of the healthy farm revenue.
It's certainly open for discussion. It's just a matter of, we don't know till June.
I thought it came in May,
30 days,
but we'll know in May.
30 days after the 1-year anniversary is when they would provide those funds, not funds.
We should know
We should know.
tomorrow if we call them up and say, you're gonna make your payment, right?
Well, I
We
haven't-
do,
Check and clear.
right?
I
know.
can tell you that I have an email to the owners of Healthy Farm.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Uh,
You guys can hear me?
Go ahead, Selectman Sadler.
Yeah, I just want to, I understand that we have to look at how we're going to get the funds, but I can tell you, I would be completely shocked if this town were to not vote to support this. I don't think it's an issue with just people that have kids in school. It's a community issue. So I suggest that we either go down the route of the healthy farms, for short term, we look at reserve funds, we do anything that we can to get this funded in the short term. But, we can't count, our chickens before they hatch with the override. But again, I would be completely shocked if this town did not support it. I mean, I've heard from lots of people in town. This is a high priority, and again, it's a community issue. So I think we're doing the right thing in terms of finding contingencies, but I personally don't think that we're going to have to use that because I think this is going to have to work.
I agree with you. Well, which is why I want to make sure for the short term we can kind of get these things in place, and then work with FinCom to kind of have that package to present to the town. So I guess we have to kind of move this forward. But so what do we want to do at this point? Do we have a good recommendation?
I think,
for
to me, I think the recommendation is to do the one-time improvements through the capital fund with that special town meeting. That isolates that. I think we would request of the FinCom to take a look at the short-term funding out of the reserve fund for 27,000 or whatever that number comes up to, and then we have to look at a long-range plan for the funding for in next year's budget. Listen, if we have to make some tough choices in that budget in order to protect our schools, so be it.
I agree with you, but
If there's any.
there's, what do you do? I
don't know.
Where the budget is right now, what do you do?
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
If every management person in this town works as close to the bone as they
I
possibly
know.
can.
I get it.
And I'm in good conscience, I can't agree with that.
Yeah.
I will say that in the short term, I think that we can accomplish tomorrow night, between Mike and the FinCom,
Yeah.
we can take care of this short-term issue so that the chief is allowed the flexibility to hire the person for the SRO position, at least for that period of time we spoke about.
Good.
Then we'll take up the next issue.
Yeah.
And
I agree
my
with that.
suggestion is, if necessary, we split the two issues.
I agree with that. You know, and
If I
you know,
could follow on that question though, or on that statement, and this is to the chief, is your officer going to be comfortable with, okay, you have a job for 3 months, and we're not sure what's gonna happen after that?
I'm certainly wondering if it's going to change the dynamic of whether they would accept the position, but I know that I have reserve officers that would accept a position with a contingency like that. I mean, you know, I have a platoon of officers who are looking to become full-time police officers. That's their goal. They're young, they're aggressive, they want to do that. Could it change the candidate? It could. It would change my training requirements moving forward. But in the short term, we're getting it done. And then, once I get the other two officers out of the academy, I would then look at the solution to get that officer properly trained if, in fact, they do not have the full-time academy, if that candidate elects not to take the position as a result of only the 3-month position. So it changes it for me. It doesn't mean I can't get it done. It just changes the dynamic of maybe some additional training costs down the line.
But talking about that for one second, I don't want to.
We have to think about, right, is on the employee side of things. You know, it may be a great plan that we have, but we need the buy-in of the employees.
Right, I would obviously disclose it. Listen, I'm offering you a full-time job, but it's only until June 30th because funding's awaiting the July 1st FY19 budget. I would have to disclose that.
But not necessarily. It's really till September 1st, till school goes back into session. Because if you essentially schools shut down in the end of June, you got July and August, but you could still use that officer and scale back on what you're funding with the with reserves, because there's no SRO duties for those 2 months. So I think you can sell another couple of months, which gives us time, but.
Well, sure, certainly, you know, and like Gary had said, you know, there's a potential of unemployment if the position's not funded.
Yeah.
We have to take a look at that. Not necessarily the officer being assigned to the SRO, but it's a full-time position where we're taking our FTE, our full-time equivalency in the police department, and we're moving from 12 to 13. That's the mission.
Right.
Right? So regardless of assignment, the FTE is 13. And we have to fund the 13.
Right. So worst case scenario, you get this person to come on as the SRO, and it doesn't get funded. Could you still keep that officer on and just, for the whole year, scale back on?
The law doesn't allow a reserve officer to work a full-time schedule unless they're certified. That's
No,
why-
what I'm saying is if you bring this person on as the SRO, full-time officer, forget the SRO piece. If we said to you right today, we weren't doing the SRO, but we're gonna give you another full-time officer, could you bring that reserve officer to full-time, right? And be in the mix and scale back on the patrols with the, net, you're not any better off, but at least you get another full-time person, is what I'm trying to say.
As long as that FTE is 13 and it's funded, we can make that work no matter how we slice
Right,
the
slice and
assignment of the
dice it.
officer, correct?
So I think you could maybe rest assured to that person, to sell it to the person, to say, if it doesn't get approved, we still can use the full-time officer. The differential is not that much, maybe it's the benefits piece. Because the hours are there. But net, overall, you don't have any more protection, but you still have another full-time officer.
and what I want to caution everybody is that this officer is already trained.
Right.
So we're saving 50 grand by putting them on in.
I could lose that
moving
dynamic
forward.
if that person
That's right,
elects
so if you
not to
then
take
go
the
into
risk.
someone else, we might have to then spend 50 grand more,
I'll send them away for 6 months, they'll be trained.
train them.
And I backfill and
So I that's
call it my
that's
reoccurring nightmare.
yeah.
So safe to say then, if you bring this person on full-time, there's not really that much danger of that person being laid off, because the differential could
If I'm
come
funded
from
for an
the pool.
FTE equivalency of 13, then I'm funded.
Right, so
That's
it's,
correct.
so
Can we use
it's pretty safe that we'll be okay.
Mr.
can we
Chairman,
use the reserve fund and just put the money back if we want to take that gamble?
I would not make that comment right now without speaking to the town administrator and the FinCom. I would say this.
No.
I would say this, I think that what we need to do is we need to take it in two pieces. Tomorrow night, what we'll do is we'll discuss the short term. In terms of the SRO officer, we can probably come up with some kind of a plan for that. And at the same time, we can discuss the longer-term SRO and come up with a game plan for that, and focus on that in the next 24 hours. And then we'll have to come back, circle back to the security issues.
Yeah, I just don't, I don't want Chief to have to go back to this person, and, because that is a tough position to put this officer in. And
You know,
we'll be throwing 50 grand out the door.
But my feeling is, you know, I've worked with Mike for a number of years, and I'm pretty sure that with him working with us, we can come up with a game plan. I have the utmost confidence in him that we can do that. I wouldn't want to give a lead pipe guarantee, as one of our famous governors gave one time, that we're going to do it, that we can afford to do it. But I'm pretty sure that, you know, that we will figure out a way to deal with the SRO issue.
So we need to, see if your officer would take a leap of faith a little bit.
Well, it may not be a leap of faith for more than 24 hours.
I know, well-
Tomorrow.
Well, that's it. Mike, I know you had a statement, then we're gonna kind of
Very quickly, I think speaking for the school committee for a moment, I think my fear would be on the, looking more at the long term. We can't grow the pie of town finances just because we want to, we have a reason for another $108,000. I think our concern as we're coming through our budget season this year, which was another difficult one, I think if that, spending the money on the SRO is going to impact the school budget, I think we want to make sure that we have the conversation and weigh our options
Right.
on teaching students versus putting an SRO in the building,
Yeah, absolutely.
and actually think that through before we take a leap. And I get that there are a lot of moving parts, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
So you got my message. That's where I was going with other departments, not just necessarily,
No, I
The school
understand.
budget
We
was
work
the-
with the schools
is
every
it a
year.
teacher or is it an SRO? And that was my point.
Well, I
Without
don't think,
saying it, now I
I don't
said
think
it.
I don't think it's a good choice.
They're not a choice, right?
I don't think it's a good choice right now. I really
Again,
don't.
I just think about it.
You know,
that's
we
all.
work with the schools every year, and we have a great relationship, and they too try to keep things down as best as they can.
That's the- One last comment, Mr. Chairman, if I can make. I would be totally against funding a structural issue with any of the marijuana money at all. To me, that's intended for capital expenditures like that 88,000, yes. And other things that we need for capital amongst the town. To fund an operating position, a yearly expense with that money is dangerous, and I would never be in favor of that.
But if we look at that and we change it and look at it in terms of the security capital
Oh, yeah,
improvements
right,
in
that's
the
fine.
schools,
You're right.
then it can be done that way.
Right, but not to fund the SRO wages.
My
No
goal,
way.
when I said we would split it, is to look at that a different way than we look at the SRO.
Right, I got it.
All right. Listen, I'm going to leave everyone with this, is that, listen, money's important. I get it. Certainly with budgets, we're a town, not just a school system. But, these kids in town, they're probably our most valued, treasures in this town. Okay. I've always said, security is, for me, the most important thing, for all of us, and never mind, our most valuable treasure, and our children. I've said it before that it takes one incident like we've seen, across the country, everyone, that, that generally will, thrust a dagger in everybody's heart that, a lot of people won't come back from. Okay. So as we talk about money, okay, let's keep perspective on what we're spending this money for. It's the next police chief, it's, God help them, next selectman, next, anything here in town, our next president, for all we know. Okay. And we got to guard that, with everything we have. Okay. So with that being said, let's try to, really, put our best foot forward and get this done, because it has to happen. It just has to happen. Okay, we can't pull back and say it's not gonna happen. One way or another, it has to happen. Okay?
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
for
you, Joe.
that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
While we were talking, I did text the owners of Healthy Farms, and I have received a response from one of them, who will give me an answer tomorrow on a question I asked him about the hosting agreement funding.
Okay.
Great.
Mike, do we need to vote on this? I know it's a FinCom vote. Do we need a recommendation? No?
I think Ed's got
Ed, you all
the
set?
message.
It's
All
got
right.
enough information.
All right.
Thank you
Good
very
night's
much
sleep,
for your
Ed.
support.
Thanks, everyone, for attending, and everybody in the crowd, thank you for
Thank
your
you all.
patience. We truly appreciate it.
Maybe you and I should meet tomorrow.
Hey, Steve, are you gonna drop?
Yeah. What time?
All right, pal.
Send me an email.
Thanks for,
Send me an email. Let me-
I'm sure
thanks for hopping on.
Ed, are you guys meeting tomorrow night?
Yes.
7 o'clock, yeah.
Sure, sure. So,
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we have a 2-minute recess.
okay, motion,
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Because I'm following you.
All right, everyone, take a couple minutes.
I'm just.
All right, hi, everybody. Welcome back. So, as we move the meeting along, so I have to open up a public meeting. We have the topic of the plastic bags, the plastic bag ban, and we're going to have a public discussion in regards to that. So I'd like to open up that public discussion now, and we'll try to be as quick as possible for those still, in attendance, okay, and get everybody up as soon as we can. So, so we have, a current, I guess, suggestion, for the town, where we've had other towns around us go to a scenario where they're limiting the single-use plastic bags. And we're hoping to do the same, or we've asked to put that on the warrant. But we wanted to certainly open it up to any discussion tonight. Whether it be from any business owner here in town that wants to voice their opinion, or anybody else in the crowd tonight. So I'm going to open it up to any discussion in regards to the plastic bag ban. And then any comments or questions from the board as well. So, do we have anybody? Sure.
I'd be glad to comment.
Sure, come on up.
Richard Mullen.
No.
And I think I sent the letter in, and I do it in support of what you're doing. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to say is other communities have learned after 5 or 6 years that banning plastic bags probably wasn't the best choice. What they found is that if they had educated people on recycling and sustainability, they would have probably gained a lot more. Right now you can take plastic bags and you can turn them into lumber, and they're building bridges out of it. And I think you folks might have some down at the park. I think the park benches, they're made of plastic. So what they're doing with plastic bags and anything clear, any clear plastic, they're taking it, recycling it, and turning it into useful products. So it's no longer the fact where you just threw them away and they didn't know what to do with them. And one of the things that I'd recommend, if a community got involved and collected plastic bags just like they do clothes, and recycle them and send them to people who actually take and recycle them and turn them into lumber, and a whole number of things. We had Coca-Cola sustainability program come to the Raleigh Library last month, and they have a great explanation of how all the plastic that they recycle, where it's going and what it does. And people in other communities have told me as I talk to them that they wish that they had done education more than they taken all the bags. Because in our town, most of the bags come from Haverhill and Raleigh. They don't come from Georgetown. People go in a market basket, bring them into town. So that's one of the things we could do instead of starting a program. It would take a lot of education, a lot of time, but I think we could go the other way and educate and recycle. Much rather see that. So that's my comment.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming to attend. Are there any other comments in our audience tonight? No? Any business owners that have come? No? Okay. Doug?
May I ask, were the business owners invited to come to this meeting?
A notice was sent out,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
I saw Nikki's roast beef, that was it, and the owner came and showed me the notice, that he got the
Okay,
notice,
all right.
so we know it's done,
Yep. And again, there's 61, I believe it's 61, towns in the Commonwealth have gone down this road. Listen, we are a small town, no doubt about it, and, many people might ask, we're going to make that much of a difference. Well, to me, standing up and making any difference, in this world is actually, a difference worth going down. So I would like to see the town go down this road, but with that being said, I always said, let the town vote it. And that's what I'm hoping for, as we move forward. So are there any other comments from the board? Questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Doug.
This is a single-use plastic bag that has multiple uses. I use them, my wife and I use them when we get them in the little bathroom trash cans. When my son shows up with his dog, We use it for that. And we use them for a number of different things. And then we tie them up and we bring them over to our trash can that is lined with a plastic bag. And we use lawn bags that are plastic. Now, I haven't been able to go through this whole document that's here. It's 57 pages long. But it's all about plastic and the waste. But there was one that was a little bit shorter. And to date, this is as of December 10th, 2017. To date, there's been 8.3 billion tons of plastic produced. As of 2015, 6.3 billion tons of plastic waste has been generated, and 79% of it is accumulated in the landfills or natural environment. I believe that we are better served, speaking of recycling, because right now they open fish and birds, aquatic fish and aquatic birds, they open them up and they're filled with plastic. There's a bigger problem with plastic than a single-use plastic bag. And I mean, it's a very low starting point. None of the trash stays here. It winds up in a landfill. I just don't think we need to push this forward. I believe we need to vet it properly. I think we need to invite like Mello and maybe some recyclers in to talk about it and what happens. Richard mentioned the Coca-Cola sustainability program, and we have a bigger problem than a single-use plastic bag. And I believe that we should allow our retailers the option and have them educate the public. I know Raleigh Market Basket, they have the single-use bag, they have a bag you can buy for 10 cents and use that, and it can be used multiple times. My wife and I use cloth bags, but they do get into the house more than we know. So what I want everyone to realize is that the single-use plastic bag is really, in my estimation, feel-good movement, and really isn't going to accomplish much. When the bigger issue is plastic, when it takes like 100 years or whatever for a plastic bottle to break down. Here it is: 50 years for a styrofoam cup, 200 years for an aluminum can, 450 years for a plastic diaper, 450 years for a plastic bottle, and 600 years for fishing line. I just want to put that forward, and I also, at this point, would not move this forward to a ban. I don't know what the impact would be on any of the retailers in town, and that's where I am with that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I comment?
Absolutely, Rose. Come on forward.
My name is Rose McPherson. I live in town. So my family and I are very much into recycling. We recycle everything as much as possible. We actually take it to Mello. We don't have a pickup. I know some people that don't recycle simply because they don't want to pay to have their recycling picked up and choose not to take it. I agree with Selectman Bonavita that it's a small thing, but it's a small thing that we can do. And it's a simple thing to do. And I totally agree with what this gentleman said about educating the public, but I feel like most people know that recycling is a good thing to do, but some still choose not to do it. And so as a town, I don't think that it's that big of a issue to ban the plastic bags, because it would be our way of doing a small thing. If it was me, I think we should do plastic bags. I think we should ban styrofoam, which, you know, is probably worse for the environment. But for me, I think it's a great suggestion. So whatever happens with that, if we get to vote as a town on it or not, that's just my 2 cents.
If I may, I'm not suggesting forever not taking a vote on it.
Oh,
But
okay.
until it's properly vetted,
Yeah,
other than just a, well, here we are.
Right.
And if I can see, my mind can be changed, all right, but right now, it's just a feel-good, Me Too type of regulations that are taking place. And the state says, oh, well, we have 60 towns. Oh, yeah, guess what? Guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna create a bill that'll ban that. So why don't we let the state handle it? But I still think we need to educate the public on the benefits of recycling. I don't, I recycle, but not completely. Right? And there's extra effort that we should put forward too. But if we're gonna make a difference in the environment, then we need to make a difference. And because there's so many things, I might need some new shirts. They're all made out of plastic, recyclable plastic, polyester. So I just think it's something that I like that you came forward here to us, and I'm not saying no to the town not being able to take a vote,
Right.
but I don't think it's proper at this point in time, is all. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Well, can I also add that, as we ask, just so the public knows, we sent out a notice to every retailer in town, okay? And as you can see, not one showed up because obviously it's not, important enough to them, i.e. it's not going to affect their business, whatsoever, right? We have one retailer in town that has 6 locations. We are the only location that hasn't banned the plastic bags yet. So they're certainly not going to be affected because they know which road, we can go down, or they can go down, right? And, as we say, it might not be, a big deal. It's also not a big deal just to bring a cloth bag or a reusable plastic bag, and do our share, in this world, to make a difference. All right. So, as much as I can understand, the retailer side, I also, have a real caution about educating because, I think that most adults know that they can recycle anything from plastic to cans to this and that. They already know that. Okay. And they know that there are the bins at the supermarket. There are bins at Mellow, and there are bins everywhere, but not enough people do it. Right? And sometimes it just takes. All right, you know what? This is just kind of the direction we're going to go down. So education, I understand it. I really do. But that's also who's educating them. Okay, on what dime are we educating them? Who's going to be responsible for it? It's nice to say we're going to educate, but who's doing it? Okay, we're not. I don't think anybody's going on TV, and educating or having class. No, it's just. It's a nice thought, but I'm challenged to see who's going to do it.
Mr. Mullen has a TV program.
We did have it on TV, on this station here, community TV, and I'll be glad to get Coca-Cola to come back. They love coming back. We can do it.
But are people going to attend? That's my problem. I don't think people are going to find it, to be an important enough issue for them to leave their families at night or in the afternoon to come and find out about
When we did it at the library,
recycling.
people get so excited, they love it. It's so much fun. It's amazing.
Again, I bet a lot of people already know it, and they just decide not to do it.
Well, I think
sometimes
that's the
it
way
just takes,
if we approached all the things in a town, like let's not educate because we already think people know that. We're going the wrong train. What we want to do is say, show people what they can do with plastic bags, and I guarantee you they will be bringing them back to Haverhill and Raleigh where they come from. All the plastic bags in town come from other towns. There's only a few people giving plastic bags out here. So what we could do is become the center of education and saying, let's make sure those things get back to the supermarket and stuff them in those boxes, because they will be sent back and turned into hundreds of products. It's amazing. I don't have that. They got a trained person who comes out and does it. So
listen, I don't doubt it. I know all these things can be turned into everything, right? I get it. I'm with you. All right. I just don't have the confidence that education is going to do it. All right, for me.
Education is not a good thing. I go along with it.
It's not
We
that
should get rid of it.
education's not a good thing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that people won't put time into the education because they're too busy raising kids and doing a million things in their day. That's not going to be part of their day. That's it's just not. Okay, I'm not taking time out of my day to go learn about plastic bags when I have 2 kids at home that I have a lot more responsibility for. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
So we put it on TV so you can stay home and watch it.
Do you really? Are people gonna watch? Do you think are they gonna watch TV? I don't know. That's what I'm
You're excited
doubting.
enough, they'll watch.
That's what I'm doubting.
I agree with you.
Can I think the purpose of a public hearing is to hear everybody's opinion and
Yeah.
not really to deliberate. I think it's more to get input and then put it on an agenda for a future, for a future meeting to talk about. So I think we're getting a little bit off track in terms of opinions. I think it's more informational than it is opinion sharing, to be honest, so.
All right. We have anybody else? All right, Gary, go ahead.
Just, I'm trying to, first let me, a couple things, but are we looking also at like expanded polystyrofoam and single-use plastic food containers? Because that's, I'm seeing that here. So I guess what I'm asking, does that mean styrofoam?
I don't think
think we
so. I don't
should
think so. I mean, it's
Well, it's
a nice
it's in what's
suggestion.
in front of us, David.
Yeah, I think,
It's in the-
I
it's in
think
the
that.
right-
Okay, so
Yeah, I think that
it
should
says
be
we're
fine.
having a hearing on single-use plastic bags, but yet I think that the article that's in front of us that would possibly be on the town meeting warrant goes further than that. So I guess that's one thing that I want to know.
Okay,
It's,
fair enough.
maybe I can ask a member of the audience, is that basically styrofoam?
Well, no, there's 2 different, styrofoam is separate from the plastic bags.
No, but we're talking here about something that's called expanded polystyrene. EPS.
That's the little symbol you see on the bottom of the styrofoam.
Okay.
So
Well,
that,
well, all I'm saying is what we're looking to put on the town meeting warrant, that's in here. That's in what's in front of us, just so that we know, so just as a matter of clarification. And then I'd just like to say that I agree with Mr. Mullen, correct? Yeah, over here. I mean, I made my living in Lawrence for years making beverage cans. And when I first started, they were steel beverage cans, and the owner of the company would not change. Well, he finally changed. And just to say that you may have the answer mentioning Coca-Cola. I mean, we made Coca-Cola cans. The aluminum can, I believe, had the definition, and I'd say should be proud of being, when I worked there, the most recycled container in the world, I believe, was the aluminum can. And so, we use a lot of waste. Obviously. I mean, in a way, I made my living making waste. I made aluminum cans that go in the trash, But with the right education and with economics. I mean, what put the steel can out of business was the economics of aluminum being recycled. And so just to go down as to what you're saying about the lumber and the materials, there was a factory over in Lawrence, because he didn't patent it, but he was making material there, I think, out of the plastic bottles, grinding them up. And unfortunately, he didn't patent it, but I mean, he was famous for what he did. I got one of the longest pair of socks I've had in my life. I don't know how long I've had them. And they were bottle socks made out of bottles. They far outlasted the cotton, and they're comfortable. So I just like to go that way, that, not just education, but economics also can lead to recycling. I mean, and I do think that, we could also encourage the people here in town, the business owners, to do what they want. I do see, I mentioned when we discussed this once before that, I see styrofoam as a much larger product, because I don't believe you can take that back to Mellow. I think a lot of
No,
people put it in there,
they throw it
but
in
you're
the
not
trash.
supposed to.
But they throw it in the trash.
So yeah, because we don't have that
There's no
recycling
recycling
available.
thing, right.
So I think if we could work with them to have that recycling available, that would be better than a ban. We'd then have, I'd have to get another trash container for the styrofoam, but I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, because on a Saturday, he's the guy that runs the operational aspect is always yelling at, no, put styrofoam in with the regular trash.
Yeah, so I mean,
So there's no way to recycle it.
I agree that education instead of banning it is the better way to go, and to work with, we could work with our people that have the disposable food containers, and we could, try to encourage them to go to cardboard, since styrofoam is not, I guess there's probably not a market for it, which is probably why it's not so recycled. Because a lot of it does bear down to economics. I mean, if there was no market for a lot of this stuff, it would probably all be going in the trash. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any more discussion? Okay, thank you for everybody's comments, on that, yep, and, I'd like to, what if, I just close it?
Declaration
Yeah, all right.
is closed.
Just, close, we're gonna close the, public meeting, on that. And again, thank you for all comments. All right, so,
Is it a public hearing or a
yeah,
public
no, it was
meeting?
public hearing. Did I say meeting? Public hearing.
Okay.
It's a meeting on a notice.
All right, so,
It says meeting.
this is me?
Oh, on the
Public meeting on the agenda, yep. Okay. Okay, so I'd like to call up, Sushi Lou and Larry Teresa to talk about our health insurance. We have some members of our unions as well here, that are welcome to come up, to the front row and have some discussion.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi, folks, how you doing?
Nice to see you.
Thanks for your patience. We certainly appreciate it. So, last time you were here, we had a lot of discussion around our direction this year with health insurance for our town employees. So, wanted to invite you back in.
Great.
Kind of give us some feedback as to what you found out. And see if you had any more information for us as well.
Okay, so the bottom line after the last time that we all got together was we did go back to Maya and were able to negotiate just a 2% rate increase for fiscal 19, which we were very pleased about. In addition, we also asked Maya if they would be willing to offer another product, which is called HMO Blue Select, and it basically is a less expensive HMO product that has a limited network, and Larry is actually going to give a very brief explanation to you all about what that product entails.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, so thank you, Sue. So as Sue mentioned, we are happy to make an HMO Blue Select plan another alternative for employees. Today we have a core PPO and a core HMO offering. We are able to now offer, effective 7/1 of 2018, a second HMO offering that is priced about 7% less than our HMO plan today. We're about 95 to 96% of the employees currently elect. This plan is known technically as an HMO Blue Select Benchmark 1. And I put together a benefit comparison that I can leave behind for folks that have questions. But at the end of the day, the plan is essentially a limited network plan. It essentially is a Blue Cross product that's available as an option. That doesn't replace the core offering for employees. And folks that elect that plan, if they find their doctors and hospitals in the plan, can save the commensurate premium. So basically, it's just a smaller network of doctors and hospitals within Blue Cross. On an HMO platform, works only for employees that live and reside in Massachusetts.
Okay. Great.
So
That's the stripped down version kind of thing that we were looking
Well,
for.
I don't think he wants to use it during stripped
Well,
down. It's
Yeah, it's simply a smaller network of doctors and
yeah,
hospitals.
who you can use.
The medical management is all the same. The plans has many of the same benefits. On the North Shore, there's quite a large network of doctors that are in the limited network offering.
I'm telling you now.
Essentially a less expensive option for folks that are looking for one.
And in order to create a bigger gap in the price of the plan, we have structured the benefits so that the benefit structure is different than the current or the core HMO, as Larry refers to it. So there is more cost sharing on the part of the employee.
Right.
But again, in exchange for that, the premiums are lower.
Right.
So again, not looking to replace what's currently being offered. It's just another offering that provides a less expensive opportunity for employees.
If you're healthy, it might be a good option to have.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. I mean, if you look at the hospitals on the North Shore, you'll find that Beverly and Leahy are in the limited network. If you're on the North Shore, you wouldn't really call that limited of a network. But it's worth noting that Mass General, as an example, is not in the limited network plan.
Can I guess I can
Go
ask
ahead.
a question, huh?
Go ahead.
If you go with one plan, do you have to stay in it for the year, or with Blue Cross Blue Shield, can you move ahead at
Yeah,
any time if
great
you so
question.
choose?
ERISA actually kind of controls that. So open enrollment is 7/1/2018. When you make a benefit election for 7/1/2018, you're actually required to stay within that
Okay.
program unless you have a qualifying event. So absent of a divorce or moving or having one of a handful of scenarios that take place, you are required to stay within the plan. Maya, however, makes a special exception. If someone should enroll in the limited network plan and they know that their primary care physician is in it today when they make that decision, should someone lose their primary care physician, meaning they no longer accept the limited network, Maya would treat that as a qualifying event.
Okay.
Because the employee chose a plan because their primary care physician was in it, and then for whatever reason, the provider practice maybe got bought by a larger provider practice, and they don't work with the limited network plan. We would allow that to be considered a qualifying event, and then someone could move. We wouldn't want an employee disadvantaged against in that scenario. There's quite a bit of consolidation going on in the marketplace.
No, that's a good, because that happened to me just recently. I lost
Yep.
my primary care physician. He chose to go somewhere else.
That's right.
Well,
So, I'll ask the question about Maya. So, are we signing a 1 year or is it a 3 year? What's the terms of the contract?
It's just a one-year renewal.
1 year renewal. Okay. So we got a guaranteed 2%. Is there any advantage in us looking beyond the 1 year with them, or with Maya? Or you can't? Not currently offered.
Yeah, it's not offered. So from a rate perspective, the Division of Insurance doesn't allow carriers to hold rates for more than a 12-month period. That you may have heard of examples of communities may have done something similar, but they may have agreed to terms over 2 years, meaning set increase this year, set increase next year. But rate holds in the group medical space do not exist for more than 1 year's period.
Was that
of time.
offered though? That was my question. Was it specifically looking at a 1 year?
All my renewals are on a 1 year basis.
Right.
so did I hear we?
So do we? Yeah, where are we in the process, Mike? Are we going to? Who has to accept it that we're going to stick with Meyer? Is that a board vote with us, or is it that committee?
No, it's not no. We're not we're renewing.
Right,
We don't, there's
Design.
no action needed, period.
Okay.
But do we need action for the third?
Yes, with the exception of
The
if
third.
we were
Okay.
to add the limited network, all we would do is stack another plan beneath the two plans that renewed at a 2% increase.
So you're saying we could be, if we add the third plan,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna see a 2% increase?
Without the third plan, we've achieved a 2% increase,
Okay.
keeping everything exactly the way it is today.
Okay,
We are now able to put in a third plan, keeping a 2% increase. This plan happens to have a 7% savings from our HMO plan,
okay.
but the only savings achieved are directly tethered to the number of people that happen to elect it.
Yes.
If no one took it, no one would really save anything.
So-
But if people enrolled in it, employees in the
Yes,
town
okay,
would
so-
save.
So, but now,
The question.
no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
I've lost it now, so go ahead.
Well,
if you
the
want.
question is
I-
that because we're adding that plan, have we actually changed plan design?
That was the question.
7% savings technically to the town, are we required by the new rules to bargain that or negotiate that 7%?
That was the question.
That's, I knew we were going, Gary.
Yeah.
We've been sitting beside each other for 9 years, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we're still offering the same plan, this is
Right.
just a third option, so
Right.
do we have to bargain for the third option,
Right.
Do you want me to?
Yes.
I'm going to give you an opinion. I'm not an attorney. You may be in a situation where you do impact bargaining with each union. You're not eliminating the current plans, but you are adding an additional plan. So I think we'll just have to have a discussion after tonight's meeting as to whether you're required to impact bargain.
Okay.
My assumption for tonight's meeting would be getting an agreement for the selectmen that the town wants to go forth and offer this program.
Yeah, I get the
I
sense
can't
that
see
we-
how we can't do it.
Right, yeah, that's right, that we get some of that 7% savings, you know, but how do you calculate it? You don't know who's
No,
gonna enroll.
That's exactly.
So how do you,
But you at least still know you're looking at 2% at a maximum.
right,
No.
right, from a management
Which is
perspective,
much better than what we've had in the
Oh, yes,
past. I mean,
right.
last,
Budgetary
last year
perspective,
we were
2%.
thrilled to see 4 last year.
Yeah, I have to budget for a 2% increase over last year. That's what's being budgeted.
You don't have enough money there for a school resource officer?
Yeah,
with
what
that
if a lot of people took that
Savings
that
already
smaller
got
thing?
sucked out. So they do.
Okay. So, process, Mr. Chairman, do we have to vote tonight, Mike, any type of vote?
Sue's suggesting that the board make a motion to accept the limited network plan in addition to
The
the
premium increase?
HMO and the PPO.
Okay.
So moved.
We can't make a motion.
No? Oh.
All right, so I'll make a
I
motion.
thought I heard it out of his lips, but okay.
Hold on 1 second. We have a, yep.
Mike, are we sure that this doesn't have to go in front of the Insurance Advisory Committee before the selectmen to take this vote?
No, we're not sure.
So I would suggest we hold off on any vote until we figure out whether it has to go in front of the Insurance Advisory Committee.
What about, what's the deadline for response due back to Maya? That would be the only question I would have.
That's a great question. We have a little bit of time to implement this plan. We generally need about, let's just call it 45 to 60 days in order to implement the plan.
Okay. So,
And I would hedge on the side of 60 days.
so we're not that far from town
Yeah.
meeting, right? Where the budget needs to be voted, so.
But to that, okay, what do we mean by going in front of, that's not the impact thing by going in front of the insurance advisory, or is that what you mean? Because I mean, from my point of view, I'd wanna put this out there as an option anyway. I think it's a good savings for not just the town, but for people, and so
But Gary,
I would wanna move that way.
It's, you said it best. If you're healthy, great plan. The problem is that a majority of my members are getting older. We have families, we have kids, things happen.
Agreed.
Okay? So, this isn't a savings if you have to actually use it. If we're all living in a bubble and never using it, sign me up. But life happens. And we know for a fact that a majority of our members, as well as the police and everyone else, are going to be using their health insurance. It's just the fact of life. So this 7% savings that you think is going to happen for the town or for our members, more than likely will not be happening.
It's all contingent upon how many people move to that plan, right?
Agreed, but we're still off, nobody's forcing
I
anybody.
understand that, but it still
It's-
could be an impact bargaining, which has to go in front of the Insurance Advisory Committee. I'm not saying
Yes.
that we're not going to accept it, but whether it's in favor or against, it still should be going in front of the Insurance Advisory Committee. And I'm not sure of that answer, that's why I'm asking Mike.
Agreed, but I'm just saying that from my point of view, I would want to go down that road. Now, So I guess the question is, if we go down that road, we're tied into timelines that we may not want to sign up, that may not fit with this.
It's not gonna make,
So, I mean, we
As
could
I-
start that
as I-
process tonight.
yeah, it's not gonna change our budget.
Okay,
It's
Yeah.
a 2% increase over last year,
yes.
no matter what.
Okay.
Um,
But I wouldn't want to be. because
Whether
of
we have
not doing
to go through plan design change or impact bargaining, that's a legal opinion that
Right.
we'll get.
Right. But I wouldn't want to miss the deadline in order to get this another option for everybody.
Yeah.
Just because we
That's
don't
right.
know if, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
No, but
why,
I also don't, Dave, I don't want to rush it down
right.
people's throats when we don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it could impact and has to go in front of the insurance advisory
Well,
committee.
I don't think,
Nothing has to happen at town meeting for this.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not, we're not
And
suggesting.
when Larry
we-
says 45 to 60 days, that's to July 1. isn't
July
it?
1?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so then we
Yeah,
got time.
there's no rush.
So we got time. All right, well, that was the question. I mean, as far as, I don't think we're jamming it down anybody's throat, we're just giving them another option to manage their health insurance, which I think is a good thing. It's a positive.
I guess where I'm at is, I mean, why can't we just make a decision and say we'd like to go this way, and if we have to go to impact bargaining to go this way,
We should do it.
unless there's some negatives to
Right,
it.
we should do it.
I'd like to go down that road, and I
Absolutely.
really don't see the negatives, other than if there is a savings, then we have to share them,
Right, and we should.
if
That's the
it
way
does
it
go
works.
that road.
Yep.
I think we just give Mike the okay to continue to work and go down the path of, we want to add this additional option for the employees. And then see where it takes us. That's all. I don't think we need a formal vote. I think it's just a matter of, hey, we want to add another option for all of our employees. If they can save money and they're relatively, single and young, and generally those are the people that are going to take that plan. They're going to save money. The town saves, and then we share in some of the savings. That's fine with me. I just want to give people more options.
The biggest part would be that any employee that chose that option would realize a reduction in premiums.
Right. Let them manage their
And the
healthcare
town
their
would
own
see
way.
some savings.
Well, I know, but that's not the important part to me.
Right,
The
exactly.
important part to me is that the employees are able
So
to
that-
save some money and
That's
have
may,
that option.
but that may be where it ends up in
Right.
impact bargaining,
Right.
because we may have to share some of that savings.
But Doug, everyone in this room and the membership are well educated in this. One hospital visit, there goes your premium savings. I'm not suggesting that we're not taking this or agreeing to it. I'm not suggesting speaking for any other union. But, this belief that the town or a member is gonna save 7% if it's never used, absolutely correct. But we all know that a majority of people need and use their health care. If they want to take that risk and take the 7%, I mean, that's completely up to them. I understand that. But I can tell you right now that a majority of members will wonder, about this cost shifting, that's double talk for it. It's gonna cost more money out of your pocket if you have to use it. They're well educated and well know about this. The fact of the matter is that a majority of the people are gonna use their health insurance. And I doubt very much, and we can add this onto, I'm not saying that we can't, but I would be shocked if a majority of members in any union actually take this.
I absolutely agree with you. I think anytime you introduce a new plan like this, if you get a handful of people signing up, I would be surprised. I think the intent is to introduce something that is less expensive, that gives the employees an option, but I absolutely agree with you that the vast majority of people will not take this plan.
It's for a select few.
Yes.
But you know what? We're still giving them options.
And we still, are the deductibles higher and the
Yeah.
The out-of-pocket
Co-pays
costs are
higher.
absolutely different than what you currently
To your point of
offer.
giving options, we have for years, close to a decade now, have been looking for comps from other companies, other providers. And I guess, Larry and I have been down this road before. It's interesting that prior to last year, when you come in with the 2%, and I understand this is a nationwide issue, but prior to last year, we're looking at, and with the town, 7, 8, 10% increases. And then all of a sudden, we go for some comps to find out, what's going on in the world. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Maya shows up with a 2%. In the last 25 years, Maya has made money, and I understand you're in the insurance business to make money, but they have only paid out twice in the last 25 years, paid out more than they have collected. I want to know why in the last couple of years, 7, 8, 10%, and then all of a sudden, Mike puts in for the comps, and then all of a sudden we come back with a 2% increase. Where has the commitment been from Maya prior to this, where they are making money off the membership of Georgetown and off the town itself with these 7, 8, 10% increases, when all of a sudden they come back with a 2% when finally pushed?
Can I address that real quickly?
Sure, so good.
Okay, so first of all, I'm not from Maya, I'm Sue Shalou from Cook and
She's with
Company. And the town actually hired me as a consultant to represent the town and the employees. And I actually was able, I'm not taking all the credit, but I was able to negotiate with Maya. They actually started off with a higher increase, and basically we were able to negotiate it down to 2%.
Without a comp.
So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We could have used you years ago. So are we bringing her back next year is the question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we didn't have a hammer before. Now we do. Maybe we didn't approach it as best we probably could, should have or could have. Who knows? I mean, I think through that whole area, the notion of healthcare and the way it was run was exploding nationally and locally. So maybe we didn't really have enough skin in the game. We're just not big enough to have a voice at times. I don't know. Maybe we could have did things differently, but I know from now going forward, I think we got it right this time. So we'll do our best. I mean, that's all we can say. I mean, I don't know what else we can say.
I think if I may, I think we went through a comp exercise last year, and the entire marketplace was given an opportunity to put their best foot forward and buy business, and not one market did. So at the end of the day, I think that's representative of the appetite for risk that exists in the marketplace and the premium that we're charging. So I agree with Joe. Healthcare is just completely out of control, and the premium dollars are just staggering, not only for members and the towns, they're staggering for Maya when we see them, the claim figures that come in the door. So as I mentioned this past summer, it's always good to kind of look at how the plan is performing, whether it's over 25 years or whether it's over 1 year.
Right. All right, Mike, why don't we just keep it, I like David's suggestion. We just we'll keep looking at that plan, and, we don't need a vote then?
No, I don't think we do. I think it's just a matter of keep it moving forward.
What's that?
You good without a vote?
I'm good without a vote. All I'll need to do is ultimately, when the time is right, create a new renewal shell, but that is when the time is right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wouldn't wait too long on that.
Right. No, move forward pretty quick.
Thank you.
Right.
I'll talk to legal counsel tomorrow.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay,
Well, thank you very much for coming
Thank
tonight.
you.
We truly appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Next on our agenda, I'd like to have the planning board come down.
Come on down.
Attorney Ackman as well. They're hanging in the.
I'm just gonna wait till the board sits here.
So.
Please, Vice Chair. Mr. Chairman Hoover, I would respectfully ask that we open the publicly posted meeting of the planning board.
Wait a second. Motion's been made, seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No discussion.
So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, from the planning board. On behalf of our board, we sincerely apologize again for the time that it's taken to call you up. It was, obviously wasn't with any malice or whatever. We have obviously a lot of important issues that were on the agenda tonight, and it just kind of flowed that way. So we appreciate your patience. Again, if I have to come before your board, put me last. It's all right. I got it coming, so no worries. But we certainly appreciate your patience and hanging in there. I know that some are tired. Okay, so maybe we have a good hour or so conversation per our conversation, Rob, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, and then we'll kind of take it from there. Okay. So with that being said, I'd actually like to Rob, why don't you take it, from there? Let's kind of talk about what we want to achieve tonight, okay? Certain points, and then we'll have an open discussion, okay?
So, basically, I think what...
Oh, by the way, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Attorney Eichman, thank you so much again for your patience as well. I didn't want to... Oh, well, you in the background. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And thank all of you folks for the time you guys put into the town. So basically, I think the intent of the meeting was to get the two boards together because there have been some discussions about differing opinions or differing thoughts about the bylaw, and so it was an opportunity to try to get us to talk about that and see if we can come to get on some sort of the same page. So that when we go into the annual town meeting, the goal would be that the selectmen can say the majority of the selectmen support this ordinance and the planning board. That would be the ultimate goal. I think the two items that are on the table for tonight basically is the what and the where these establishments could be located. And so the marijuana establishments or the recreational marijuana, the first question that wanted to put out to you folks for discussion and start to get some of your feedback in terms of what your thoughts were in terms of the categories, and are we allowing all of them as currently listed or some? And I was going to turn to John. I told him I was going to ask him to just read those categories that we have currently listed right now under the marijuana establishment.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Rob's talking about marijuana establishments. Marijuana establishments is the overarching phrase for all types of licensed marijuana businesses in the state. It includes, at this point under the state's regulations, it includes 8 different categories of uses, all under that particular umbrella. I do have a list here somewhere. So you have manufacturing, you have retail, my list is escaping me. You have cultivation, you have micro businesses, you have craft. And again, I apologize, my list was not directly in front of me.
Co-op.
There you go. Craft marijuana cooperatives. And let's see, marijuana transporters, and I think there's 1 or 2 others. But again, maybe that's not so important right now. I think what the planning board is looking for guidance on is, right now the town has a moratorium on recreational establishments of all types. That moratorium expires on June 30th. Town meeting is the first week of May. We have an opportunity to pass zoning bylaws to regulate and or prohibit medical or recreational marijuana. The state schedule is in some sense driving the urgency of this, as the board is now probably well aware. April 1st, which is days away, the state is to begin accepting applications for location of marijuana establishments in towns and cities. At the time that those applications are submitted, the zoning bylaws or ordinances of the town and city will be examined to determine whether that organization is allowed in the town. That will be determinative with the state as to whether they can obtain a license. So the sooner that the town decides how it wants to regulate these organizations, the more protection it will have from where these organizations could potentially locate. Because we have a moratorium, if we pass a bylaw at this town meeting, it will basically establish going forward where these establishments can be located. So at this point, I think the planning board has indicated to me that their slate is essentially open. The possibilities range from prohibition of marijuana establishments in their entirety of the town, that any kind of prohibition of one or more types of establishments would require not only a town meeting vote, would require a ballot vote to confirm that. Short of a prohibition, the town can regulate time, place, and manner for marijuana establishments in the same way it now regulates medical marijuana establishments in the similar regulation. Those are essentially the options before the town. There's actually a third option. The third option would be essentially to pass no more regulation and to allow these establishments to be governed by the zoning bylaws now in place. They fit where they fit. It wouldn't be defined specifically, but in a general use category, for instance, such as retail uses, potentially a marijuana retailer could qualify and be placed there. So those are essentially the three categories of uses. The second, I think, subject that the planning board is looking for guidance, as I understand it, is assuming that we determine what we're willing to allow for placement in the town, where will that placement take place? We have an overlay district now. That overlay district is primarily at the intersection of 133 and 95, but there is an additional component of it in the CB district, which is right down here around the corner. So
a map that we'll show you folks when we
Yes.
get back to that one. That'll be the second one on our list. So we can show you that in more detail.
So, John,
Yep.
we have an establishment already in town that
Correct.
has a dispensary for medical marijuana.
Correct.
How does that prohibit us from passing anything else going forward? In other words, hypothetically, if we said, look, we don't want any in the town, we already have one. How does that, I don't want to say handcuff us, but how does that limit us in terms of the new regulation and this new bylaw?
Yes, correct. There is some restriction. You have registered marijuana dispensary in town now. Actually, I believe you have one in operation, and you've signed a letter of intent with the second one. Is that
Not a dispensary,
for
just to grow.
cultivation, correct.
Right.
So the limitation in state law, number one, RMD may apply to convert to a marijuana establishment. The town's bylaws may not operate to prevent that conversion, with one exception.
Right.
If there's a town vote to prohibit that type of establishment, that would operate against the conversion as well. Lacking that, you cannot pass a bylaw that would prohibit the conversion of that RMD to a marijuana establishment in its location for the same types of uses that RMD is currently in operation for.
Plus, we already have an agreement with Healthy Farms that says we would not protest or get in their way if they wanted to do such a conversion.
Right.
Such a conversion, right? Mike, do we have, am I
Yeah,
saying that right?
We've already
committed
that
that.
we would support their application to a recreational marijuana facility.
Right.
Sales facility.
But the question on that, Mike, becomes, if we have someone who wants to establish that in town, we go to Healthy Farms, they say, well, right now, we are choosing not to do that. I mean, how long do we have to keep that first right of refusal kind of open?
Well, John could answer that, but Mike.
That's right, and they refused, they're done.
Well, that's what I mean, is
No,
it?
as long as my thought is as long as that agreement is in force.
As long as they're in business,
Yeah.
we can never say no.
It's a 5-year agreement. It's
Okay.
got 4 more years to run.
All right, so technically, I'm not gonna go down that road.
I don't know, John, am I practicing well without a license?
I don't have the agreement in front of me, but I think what you're saying is essentially the agreement's enforceable by its terms, and if it's got a term that says we won't do it, that term will run for the length of the agreement.
So we have to remember that at least over the next, 4
Well,
years.
again, I would look at that to see if it says first right of refusal, if you refuse the first time, you're done. The
It
option is
doesn't
dead.
say that. It's wide open.
Live and learn, right, Harry?
Every day.
So I just want to try to bring it back to the categories, and as far as the planning board is concerned, generally speaking, and Matt had to leave, so we have 4, Matt Martin, and if I say something that any of you folks misspeaking, speak up. But I think generally speaking, the planning board is on board with right now that all of the categories that are currently listed would be something that would be what that we would be in our ordinance allowing under the recreational or marijuana establishment. So I'm trying to give you a sense of where the planning board is, and the point of this was to get together and talk about this and see where you guys are with this.
It comes down to 4 opinions, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary, you can start off.
Well, we do have options that I think have to come before us, and I think some of it is us as a board, and that's in how many we want. And there's the 20% thing, you can have 20% of liquor licenses and that. It looks like we definitely can't say we don't want any. So, I could see, we've got the 1, whether we want to keep it at just 1 or maybe say 2. I'm not sure there, but I certainly don't want to go much beyond that. I will say my concern is going to be the social consumption and possible cafes. I mean, that's one thing that I have a concern with. I don't have all the answers for that, but I certainly don't want to see, any place in the downtown area turning into a cafe, even though you don't buy it. Well, yeah, we're gonna give you a hamburger and smoke, or do whatever you want. So that's my concern.
So let me just on that, John, can you show on the board where it's going to be proposed to be?
What we've come up with a draft ordinance, and what I was hearing back from the Board of Selectmen and Mike Farrell.
Could be live,
discussions.
but we can see it.
This is the CB district right here. The CB district is part of the medical marijuana
Yes.
overlay district.
Yes.
Okay. That is being proposed for extraction. So the CB district would be taken out of the medical marijuana district. That's the closest the overlay district now comes to the downtown area. What is being proposed would keep the overlay district within the existing medical marijuana overlay district boundaries, which are primarily out in the I-95 area. So from East Main Street and south, including Healthy Farms, all the way up to Jewett Street.
I was gonna say,
So
but
there's
it does
all
encompass
activity?
Jewett.
What's that?
To Gary's point,
All
would that include all activity?
recreational.
Cafes, everything?
Well, no. What's also being discussed,
Is that what we're asking, Gary, right? Because
and the social aspects, the cafes, consuming locations, that's not being proposed in our ordinance right now, and we have the right to postpone any action on that based on the state statutes being amended. And I believe it's till December of 19.
Yeah, I saw
That we
that
have
in
to
there.
worry about that aspect of it, along with the transportation aspect. So, I think as the discussion goes along tonight, I'd like to hand out this draft proposal, and
I think we have it. I think we already have it.
this one's much more abbreviated, based on the advice of our fine town council.
This is a latest and greatest, much improved.
And I think our discussion is going along the lines that everybody will be able to follow this language pretty easily, I think. Distilled.
Yeah. If you present it in those 4.
Yeah. Okay, can I continue? May I?
Please.
Okay, all right. So this reads pretty simply, and I'll read it aloud.
This is to amend the Town of Georgetown zoning ordinances by providing within the existing Article 18, that's the medical marijuana article, regulation for the use and distribution of marijuana not medically prescribed, the acronym MNMP, as provided in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 94G, and shall require the issuance of a special permit granted by the Planning Board pursuant to two criteria set forth in Article 18, with such conditions as may be consistent with General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 3, parentheses D. Further, said MNMP establishments are permitted solely within the existing medical marijuana overlay district, that is, as cited in Article 18 and as shown on the town zoning map. It shall be further stipulated herein that said existing marijuana overlay district shall be amended by eliminating the area of this district situated within the Commercial B zoning district.
So did those 4 points come across clearly? Because I've been doing this for a while now and I get confused every
Well,
day. I look at
it sounds like you're taking the CB out for both medical and residential.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right.
And it's identifying a special permit.
Right, so.
So, this is the existing overlay district area, right here, running along the easterly side of 95, and then it broadens out here on both sides of 95, and then you have an island up here. That overlay district area in the aggregate will remain intact as proposed. And then the CB district here, and it's the only CB district in town, the allowance for medical marijuana and recreational, as Gary pointed out, would be taken out of that district. That district, in effect, would be eliminated by this proposed ordinance. And that's what I heard loud and clear leading up to tonight's meeting from Board of Selectmen and talking to Mike Farrell about it. So we don't have that provision within our ordinance that would allow for the use to be, say, exhibited, you know, in use in the downtown area, therefore, you know, protecting the image of the community.
Mr. Chairman? Sure. Before anybody panics out there, the CB district is not being eliminated. The proposal is to remove, to downsize the overlay district to eliminate the portion that is now comprised of the CB district. CB district is going to remain. Nobody's proposing to eliminate that.
Now,
Well, what's going to be allowed is, so in other words, we go ahead and do this. But what can people do by right with recreational marijuana within the newly established or reduced size district?
If I can just
Can we control that?
within the provisions of the law, right?
Well,
they-
that's special permit.
Each applicant would still have to have a host agreement arranged with the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
And then it's a special permit requirement
Okay.
with the planning board. All provisions of the law would be scrutinized in that special permit review, together with the host agreement.
Even a cafe would have to have a special permit?
Well, that's the thing is, we're not proposing in this amendment
Right.
any language to that effect.
Okay.
Because the state has put that on hold.
Okay, so this is grow and dispensary.
Grow and dispense.
Now, so back to Gary's point, can we cap
Retail sale,
retail, right, retail grow?
but not consuming on site.
Oh,
Not,
okay.
you know, puffing
Right,
or whatever
right,
you're
got
gonna
it.
do on site with
Okay.
this stuff.
So back to Gary's point, how do we control in its aggregate the number of establishments within the zone? In other words, even if there's some cities and towns that their liquor license are maxed out, so you gotta wait in line or you gotta buy one, right, from an existing business. So can we cap the number where the people won't even apply because there's nothing left, there's no openings?
Understood.
Talking to Attorney Eichman about that.
Yeah.
In reading the guidelines. It's, the community has to provide for no less than 20% of the total number of package store liquor licenses.
Round it up.
Well, no, there's no rounding provision within the law either.
Okay.
So the town of Georgetown has 3 package store licenses, liquor licenses, all right? So 20% of that, you know, rounding to the smallest number allowed, would be 1. You know, whether or not the town would ever be challenged to allow for more than 1, that's for another day and possibly a battle or an agreement or whatever, so that, you know, maybe you have a second applicant, and you have a third applicant.
For dispensary only, we're talking now.
No, we're talking.
Retail sales.
No, we're talking about all of the uses allowed.
Yeah.
Within the provisions of this law.
Now you confuse me, because we have a second applicant that we've already going through for grow, but that's medical.
Yeah.
So one, meaning retail sales, right? Meaning 1, we already have 1, but that's medical. Is it 1 and 1, or is it 1 for all use?
Well, if I could just continue, and believe me, correct me if I'm wrong, throw stones at me, but what John stated earlier, there are a multitude of uses allowed within this particular law.
Okay.
One of the uses is a retail storefront, theoretically, just like a liquor store. So it's a retail storefront that would sell marijuana.
Does it matter whether it's recreational, or does it matter if it's medical?
Mr. Chairman, can I address that, if I may? The discussion has been centering on a provision in the bylaw that, in the State Act, that talks about limiting the number of marijuana retailers in the town to less than 20% of the package store licenses issued in the town. That is limited to marijuana retailers, i.e. the marijuana version of the package store, essentially. That is presently being interpreted by the Cannabis Control Commission as allowing towns to, by bylaw, restrict the number of marijuana retailers, which again are recreational retailers, not RMDs,
Okay.
to a certain number. That's the way it's being interpreted right now. The 20% provision is not a limitation, it's an additional requirement. If you restrict it to a level that is below 20%, that particular bylaw that places that restriction on these must also be approved at a ballot. If 20% or above, you do not need ballot approval. You can do that. That's the learning we have right now. There is some question in my mind as to this particular interpretation, as to whether it could be subject to challenge in the future, but that is the guidance we're getting now from the state.
Okay.
I'm not an attorney, but that's today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everything's always today. Everything's
Well,
subject to change.
Yeah, but with
But
this,
from a big picture perspective, I like what you're doing. But, so that's step 1, right, is to cull this down a little bit, let's get it there. But then my concern is what's gonna go on within that district. And for me, you know, I think we have 1 marijuana dispensary, I don't care if it's medical or, you know, we have 1. And I'd like to keep it at 1, you know, and that's it. You know, grows, yes, facilities to grow, but retail sales, whether it's medical or not, I only want 1. That's just me. That's one person's opinion.
Harry, go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment, and I'm sure John will correct me if I'm mistaken. My understanding is the retail to the public establishments are the only ones that the town gets the 3% sales tax from.
I don't care about the tax. I only want 1.
That is correct.
Yeah.
You know,
3% of
right.
potentially
I shouldn't say I don't care, but
billions of dollars.
But Harry, on the flip side, if we bring in more, there's also another side of that, and David and I have talked about it many times, and that's reputational risk. That this town has now all of a sudden has a reputation of 1, 2, 3, 4 establishments, right? And let's face it, when the time comes that families want to come into town, they don't want to go into a town with 3, 4, 5 marijuana establishments. Therefore, what happens? It'll then drive housing values down, all right, because now there's no demand for it. So all that money, all right, I can see that. But then our current citizens are going to lose a ton of value on their home values as well, and nobody's going to want to come into this town. All right.
Concrete plants. And
What's that?
Concrete plants and establishments that are maybe not as desirable as one would want to see in their downtown or across the street from where you live. Typically, they are zoned into areas where they're not in the view. If you look.
No,
Absolutely. That's the
absolutely.
whole idea behind zoning.
Yeah, sure.
Put what you want over here so that you can get your financial compensation from the industry.
Yeah.
And put it where you want it.
Yeah.
And I believe this is what the whole idea of zoning is, and putting them in the IVCC district there.
Right.
Is.
But, again, I'll go back to the fact that, when people move into a town, whatever town it is, they don't say, well, all right, there's, again, whatever amount of, marijuana establishments, I'll call them, right? They don't care where the zoning is. They don't say, oh, well, they're all here and it's not going to be near a school. They just want to know how many there are. And they say, well, all right, there's 3 or 4. Georgetown's off the list.
Yeah, we don't want to be
Right.
the Amsterdam.
We don't, we have to watch out for that reputation is all I'm saying, okay? Where people that might want to move into this town with children and, good families, that are looking for places to kind of settle down, they don't scratch us off the list because all they know is that there's a certain amount of establishments in the town. Again, they don't care where the zoning is. They just want to.
So can I ask a question to the two Johns, thinking out loud? Do we need to come to conclusion tonight or some sort of consensus tonight on how many?
I'm thinking aloud here for a moment. Couldn't we include in the language that we have in the draft, couldn't we include not to exceed 20% of the allowed uses?
Yeah, and specifically designate marijuana retailers not to exceed 20%, sure.
So that would, legally, that would be the best we could do, taking into consideration that the town, in a broad sense, voted in favor. And then we do have the medical marijuana facility already that's basically entitled to. And they would end up being the one. As long as we have that language in there. And we can put that language in there within the provisions of the law. And then, some people may want more, but they're not going to be entitled to it because our laws don't allow for it. So, everything's kind of hidden out of sight.
So I'd like to hear how the other selectmen think
Yeah,
of that 20%.
So what do you think of that? I know you.
First thing I want to address is the.
I'm sorry, Doug, I just want to clarify one thing. I'm sorry, Doug.
Go right ahead.
The 20%, I mean, we got to be careful with the language. I think the concept is fine. But if we just say no more than 20%, we only have one, and we have 3 package store licenses. One is going to be 33%. We're essentially prohibiting them in the town. That needs a ballot vote. So, I mean, but the simpler way to do that, frankly, is not to do it by, effectively putting this bylaw in. I mean, I suppose you could, but the more direct way would be to simply prohibit marijuana retailers. If you're going to pass a bylaw that has the effect of prohibiting them.
I'd vote for that.
I'd vote for that.
Just again, one person's opinion.
I want to address the notion of declining property values. I have talked to realtors in Washington State and Colorado, and I have read data that nixes that fear. The property values in Colorado and Washington have gone up. So I don't think that we should be putting that out there as some type of fear that the property values are going to go down. Property values go up, property values go down. And right now, the statistical data doesn't confirm that property values go down in the states that they've done the statistical data on. Second, it's always been my understanding of this whole formula that you had the right, as a community, to have as many as you want, but you could also use this formula that they put out to ensure that, like if you had 100 liquor stores, then you could have 20 retailers, right? Well, we don't. We have whatever it is, 3. And it establishes the floor. It's conservative right now. It's the way the CCC is interpreting it. We know that things can change. We just changed the tobacco age to 21 in town, so things change. So right now, I'm more than happy to have one retailer in the community, right where it is, on the highway, and there's a whole host of other businesses that are involved in that industry, like laboratories and places like that, that could be a good boon for the town, for the community. So right now, I don't want to see any social consumption cafes or places where I can go in the restaurant and get an infused beer or an infused cookie. All right, but that's me. Okay, there are people that want that, but I don't. And the CCC is migrating away from that right now until they get the core established, the core businesses established, and then they'll take that on. And they were asked to, like farmers and craft growers and like this. I just think that we're more than happy with one, and that would be the one that we have that is asking to convert from a nonprofit to a for-profit facility, and does want to participate in the recreational cannabis market as a retailer. But I'm happy with the one.
Me too. Okay, Gary?
Okay. How many, and one thing I wrote down is, does anybody know, I know it says number of retail off-premise alcoholic beverage licenses issued. So I guess that means that we've got 3, that's issued is what that means, because there could possibly be a 4th. So where I'm going is, does anybody know the number that we're allowed to have of that?
We're only allowed 3 package stores.
We are only allowed.
It would only increase if our population increased.
Okay, because I thought that Crosby's was, I remember Crosby's was in and they were talking about trying to get one, I thought. They said in the future they.
So do they count with beer and wine?
No, it's, I think it's probably all alcoholic, but I'm not sure. It says off-premises alcoholic beverage licenses. So I'm not sure whether beer and wine is included or not.
It would be counted.
But the other thing I want to go to, just in my notes, and that would be, would we need perhaps another moratorium on cafes or that? I know the state has said they've held off, but we were still advised, even though we didn't know everything, to put the moratorium in that we've got in place. So would we possibly want to think about a moratorium on cafes, even though they don't have the regulations out there? Just throwing that out there. That's just something I wrote down in my notes. Perhaps a moratorium on cafes and that until the date that they gave us. It was, I think, December of something. But and then I'm not sure. I'd like to think that the one. But if it's done in the right thing, and you're talking special permitting, one of the owners of Healthy Farms is in the restaurant business. And if he were to open up a high-class restaurant that went off of this, and somebody else was, I don't know that that's such a bad thing. I don't want to think of it as just your local little shop selling cigarettes that we're going to get another one of them, only they're now selling, marijuana in whatever way they can. But I mean, and I guess you can't have one without the other. But I mean, if someone to come in and, you know, you've got a district down there that may be well-fitting, and somebody wanted to open up a cafe of some type, and it was more of a high-class thing, I'd say yes. So for me, I would say at this point, I'd be okay with the 3, just like we have for the alcoholic beverages. But, you know, if it's done right, and what I see here is it's all about special, a lot of it goes back in front of that board with, you know, they are the special permitting authority, I believe, and quite frankly, I've got a lot of faith in our planning board, so.
May I?
And,
May
yeah,
I
go ahead.
address something that Mr. Powell said?
Absolutely.
The thing with moratoriums and the way the state views it, why they'll allow a moratorium to December 31st of 2018. If it went longer than that, they could consider that prohibitive and an attempt in a ban.
I'm not saying
No,
on
no,
retailers.
listen, let me
Okay,
finish,
yeah.
all right? So if we talk about moratoriums for cafes, which they haven't really even addressed yet, but if we can go ahead and establish a moratorium and pick some arbitrary date for the moratorium to cease and desist, right? The state could still come down and say, well, you're trying to prevent all this, and we find you, you know, that you need to have an outright ban.
Well, they gave a date of November 2018, I guess
Gary.
No, that's not the moratorium date.
Gary, right now, the CCC has been asked not to take on social consumption, I think transportation, and something else.
Delivery.
And well, is that
Transportation is fine. They've been asked to hold back on delivery.
Okay.
And social consumption.
Right. And they have agreed to do that. So they haven't written really any rules and regulations for that. So until the rules and regulations come out, and whether...
Well, that's why I was looking more for a legal opinion on whether we have to. And I wasn't saying we need to, just throwing the question out there.
No, what I was trying to get across is that we can go ahead and do moratoriums, but we have to be careful in establishing the length, or it could be considered as a prohibitive act.
Well, it may not even be needed if they can't get licensed, I guess.
In all likelihood, right now, it can be determined in the fall, for the fall town meeting, if we need to implement a moratorium having to do with cafes. We don't have to cross that bridge with this town meeting. In the fall, we do have time, and all indications are to that effect. So we don't have to worry about that at this point. We can worry about it in the fall if we need to.
That maybe, John, you could answer, but as I understand it, the selectmen grant the license, so it would be up to the selectmen board to grant another license
The host agreement.
beyond the 20%. So should you have your own regulation,
Are we granting a license? I don't think we grant the license. We do the host agreement.
In case.
They keep saying license with everything I've read.
Oh, okay, host agreement, yeah.
They call it a license, whatever agreement comes to.
If I may?
Sure.
In what I have here from KP, and it's additional issues to consider when imposing prohibitions and limitations, and I've got highlighted that it must be zoning or general in nation, and they recommend that the municipality consider adopting both a general and a zoning bylaw or ordinance to prohibit.
So you
Well,
get it.
that's what I'm reading here from now. Now, this was, I think, August of 2017, so that could have changed by now also, because we're looking at a ever-changing thing in front of us. But that's the last that I've seen from them on.
So I really think it's not only the zoning. Do we agree?
No, I agree.
It's also the board of selectmen.
Well, it's like from what I'm understanding, at some point, we could say, as long as we don't say we don't want any, that's what's gotta go in front of and be voted on, I guess. But I mean, if we say we want 1 or 3, it looks like we're okay with pretty much doing that.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong, in addition to the special permit each applicant would have to have a host agreement signed
Yes.
with the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
So it's just not the planning board and special permit, it's your body
Right.
reviewing.
Right. Mike?
John, does the letter of non-opposition still exist?
Mike, that still exists for medical marijuana licensees. And the reason that is because the law that was passed by the state regulating recreational marijuana also provided for the elimination of the medical marijuana law that exists now and the incorporation of that licensing under the CCC along with recreational. But it also provided that until the CCC assumed their regulation, the existing Department of Public Health regulation procedure would remain in place. So to date, that procedure remains in place because the CCC has not addressed regulation of medical marijuana. So all those regulations, which doesn't include the requirement, but by inference, the Department of Public Health has said you need a letter of non-opposition. The town could say no to that. That's in their application requirements. That's still in place. So if a medical marijuana establishment comes to the town now, they still need to come to the board for that letter of support, non-opposition. They also, however, do need a host community agreement now.
The recreational need.
Right.
But do they also, do they need a letter, do the recreation people need a letter of non-opposition?
Not under the current regulations.
Okay.
They do need a host community agreement.
Which,
Comes to
can
the
we,
Board of Selectmen.
can the board deny a host agreement?
Everybody's being very careful with that question.
Yes.
There's some indication that the statute does not prohibit the board from just saying no. The requirement is drafted to require the marijuana establishment to have one.
But the nature of that agreement is still up for discussion.
Or we could
In
say we want
negotiation,
90% of your revenue.
We should
Well,
try to
I
define what
think
that
we
is
can,
for us.
think we can say that there are limitations in the act about what that agreement can now contain, but that also remains to be somewhat
Yes.
fleshed out in practice.
And just to point out that that is the first step. The Board of Selectmen gets it long before anybody else gets it.
Yep.
Until it gets on a post agreement, it never gets to
Do we have a
go to
question
special
here?
permit.
Yeah, there were actually a couple things. One is that I think that the concerns that have been brought up are very good concerns that we might want to do some risk analysis and think about it in terms of risk management. That what's the likelihood of that risk coming to fore, and then what's the impact if it does? And we can look at some of these specific questions and really figure out, is this something that we need to concern ourselves with, or is this something that's so unlikely that we shouldn't worry about it? Of course, the base of this is that this is an infant industry that nobody knows anything about. I'm glad to hear that there's been some research done in Colorado and Washington, because this is the only place where we've got a track record. And for all I know, there's no possible way for Georgetown to become the Amsterdam of Massachusetts. Maybe Newburyport.
Maybe Merrimack Valley. I qualify my statement. I said Merrimack Valley.
Okay, fair enough. But, I think that there is tax revenue that should be part of the matrix here, the thought matrix. I heard earlier talking about using some of these funds to fund police and safety. And actually, the third question I have is, I was wondering what the chief's thoughts are and concerns, and where do you see as the risks?
Well, I think it's complicated on the law enforcement, and only because, I have the medical regulations here, which I became a resident expert at. We now have the recreational, which I attended the 3 hearings concerning the proposals and the changes and some of the subsequent changes that came out with the regulations that were finally adopted. Enforcement is another 2-hour conversation, whether you talk about the black market, whether you talk about transportation, whether you talk about brick and mortar versus someone who has a virtual business, and then encompass that potential enforcement with the existing medical marijuana regulations. I mean, they're talking about taking delivery vehicles and splitting them in half, so you would have one side of the vehicle being regulated for medical marijuana, the other side being regulated for recreational. And when you talk about road officers trying to deal with that, you know, it's just another complication with enforcement. And then never mind all of the ancillary problems concerning drug use and the opiate epidemic. So law enforcement, in our view, in dealing with this, I mean, we have to protect everybody that's involved. So whether we decide as a community that we want these facilities, I am charged with protecting them. If we don't want anything to do with it, and that's what the town has voted or opted to do, whether it be by planning or zoning, I deal with that as well, just like I had dealt with Healthy Farms. So I think it's a complicated question for our end, only because if a majority of this community wants these facilities in our community, then we stand ready to protect both the folks that are going to use them and the folks that use them. Our positions or opinions really can't come into play.
Yep.
Unlike a board member who can have a definitive opinion, wherever this falls, I have to charge my officers in my office to protect our community, whether we vote for or against it.
Yeah. And, you know, along those lines, I mean, I would caution, you know, yeah, it's additional revenue, but at what cost? You know, to Chief's point, I think there is a, even if, you know, studies don't say it, there is nothing that's going to tell me that our reputational risk goes down the toilet. Okay, there's nothing that's going to.
I would
that's
argue
nothing going to.
180 degrees from that.
If you talk,
some families it would be.
If you talk to families with kids, okay, and I'm certainly in that circle, okay, nobody I have talked to wants any part of another. There are people that don't want the one we have, okay. They want no part of a second one, okay. A lot of them have a concern over this second, you know, facility that's just cultivation, okay, and I have to kind of talk them off the ledge, you know, and say, hey, it's not, you know, dispensed, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know, they're shipping it out, okay? And when we talk about, you know, families, right? I mean, listen, there might be people that don't have kids, yeah, you know, more the merrier, right? And I'll respect that if that's their opinion. But if we're talking about a good family community here, okay, which Georgetown has become, okay, more often than not, I think I represent a lot of people that have families that don't want another, okay, because those are the people I talk to, you know, those are the people that I'm hanging out with and going to games with and everything else, okay. That's so, again, I just caution, you know, yeah, all right, it might turn into more revenue, but why can't we then turn to more revenue with just other business? Okay, why don't we just kind of look at, all right, you know, maybe here's, you know, a part of town that we can, you know, bring in, you know, a widget company, whatever, and it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't want to try to.
You won't get 3% of sales.
Right.
I'm not saying we will, but that's okay with me. All right, because to me, the risk far outweighs the additional revenue. All right, to me, okay, that's kind of the point.
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to try to do, and I don't want to cut anybody
Yeah.
off. If anybody has any strong feelings, they want to keep talking about something, please. But what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is to try to summarize what I think I've heard.
Yep.
And correct me where I'm wrong, but Gary, I think in terms of the numbers of facilities, I think I heard you say, you know, 3 was okay if done right. That's what I wrote down. Is
I
that?
think that's what I said, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not positive I said, but I think I could
Some-
consider that, yeah.
Because I just want to take this
Yeah.
back and make
Yes.
sure we are
Agreed.
accurately representing what you guys were thinking. Dave, 1, I think, and you guys are pretty well the same, I think, and I lump it that way, 1. And Doug, I wasn't quite clear, you said no social consumption, which I got, but did it
Right.
leave open for more than that?
For retail establishments, I'm right at this point in time in favor of 1.
Okay.
But I'm wide open to laboratories and different businesses like that
Okay.
aren't going to be interacting with the consumer in retail. Chief, I have a
And
question for
keeping
you.
them-
I'm with Doug.
I was gonna say, as am I.
Yeah, we are too.
How
We're
many-
definitely.
How many complaints
Okay,
have you
that's a
received
good
from,
clarification.
at Healthy Farm?
Police calls for service
Yeah.
to go down there.
Right.
Since they've been open, that required our
Oh.
action one.
In a year?
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to, so I don't want to lose this train. So that's the number of facilities. I think I've heard everybody, or seen people nodding their heads in terms of where we're suggesting this falls and taking that out.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody was in agreement.
I don't know how it got there in the first
You're
place.
sitting there just looking at me.
It's the downtown, right? The downtown.
And these are just your individual opinions.
It's a tough call for me. I'm not so.
It's okay.
I'm not so sure that, I mean, I wouldn't want 10 cafes down there, but I'm not so sure
Okay.
that one would hurt. I mean, we have restaurants now that serve alcohol and that, and, you know, for the most part, we do okay, so.
Okay, so that gives me that. I think I have seen everybody nod their heads to just understanding the special permit part of the process and that the host agreement goes to you folks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we have what we need.
Yes.
So, and you know, most of us want it, for me, as far away as possible from downtown. That's,
I have a question as a resident, not as a planning board, but how much control are you giving to the existing medical marijuana facility? If they're closed now, what have they done? How does that process go? What's in the future of the process? How are you keeping track? Who's enforcing? That's the questions I want to know, and particularly you're saying to do it right. Everyone that I have spoken to says that they would prefer buying it rather than growing it because they feel it will be done right. But right is not the history that we're experiencing right now.
Well,
They're closed now.
We can't control how they grow their
but
products.
self-admitted though.
But
We didn't catch them, they self-admit.
Matter.
They self-reported. They self-reported,
That's no
so they're
excuse.
policing, it's important that they police themselves too.
The
And
state is
yeah.
supposed to monitor the whole process, right?
Yeah. And they have.
Where was the state?
Seed to sale.
My question is, where was the state? They had to be notified by the owner, is what I read. We were not,
I don't think the state can, you know, set up a desk there.
Yeah, they're not there
have
weekly.
scientists there
They're-
testing.
Healthy, this is why Healthy
well, that's
Farms,
the question I have. What is the process? What is the right way?
what Healthy
If-
Farm,
I mean, that's
what
a
Healthy
discussion
Farms
for another
did.
day. I think, you know, we as a town, it's like, again, it's like any other business in town. If the concrete plant mixes a bad batch of concrete, I mean, what's that to the town? I mean, again, the dumpster guy was there making dumpsters. If he makes one crooked dumpster, he's supposed to notify the town? You know, I mean, they're a business like anything else,
I don't
and
see that.
we don't,
It's not a business like anything
no,
else.
we don't have any jurisdiction over going down there, and what do you expect us to do?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's a big
It's
question.
controlled by the state, just like the bank downtown is controlled. If it's a state chartered bank, controlled by the state and audited by the state.
We're talking about medical, and medical is
CVS.
for people that
CVS
are
is giving
ill.
out medical drugs every day. So we're not the monitoring agency.
So I was just
I
going
don't
to
know
say.
what you want us to do.
Absolutely.
What do you want us to do?
All right, now,
But I was just going to say, we're not going to resolve it.
Yeah, I know. Again, Tilly, I don't mean to be.
no,
Go ahead.
I just want, Healthy Farms did what they were supposed to do. They tested their own product and found this substance. It was a pesticide they used in cleaning some equipment. And apparently it didn't, you know, there was residue that entered the soil, that entered the plant. They tested, they found it, they notified the State Department of Health. So what Healthy Farms did was the process that they are required to do with the state. So we rely on their integrity, just like we would rely on the integrity of any business owner.
Well, in my mind, it was poorly. If they relied on the manufacturer to inform them that their product was spoiled and not retailable, there's something wrong with that system.
Well, don't forget, they're also operating under an umbrella that if they don't do the right things, that there are some heavy fines, that they probably don't want to go down the end. Again, I'm going to talk about it again, reputational risk.
Right.
Then you have people that, no, okay, you know what, they were selling tainted product. Guess what? We're not going there anymore. We're going to go to Salem, all right, or somewhere else. So now you're risking fine and reputational risk, where you're not going to get that customer back again, all right? So I think operating under that umbrella, and knowing what those repercussions are, alone are enough for them to even, monitor themselves.
They're in a remarkably good position right now. They're a monopolistic environment in Georgetown. They don't want to jeopardize that.
No.
The last thing they want to do.
And even in the region. For that. I mean, there's some others,
Mr.
but.
Chairman, if I could just bring it back. And
Rob, go ahead.
What I'd like to do is, I think, David, do you have something
Yeah, just
specific?
at
'Cause I'd
one
like
point,
to-
and I want to refer this also for John to hear what I have to say, is that I'm a little bit worried about if we move to more than one, or we move to three, and we say we want it to be classy. Let's get classy Georgetown, right? About interpretation of what's classy and what isn't, and open ourselves up for litigation from an applicant that says, I've provided everything that, makes sense and is done within, best practices, and yet the town of Georgetown keeps telling me to go away. I worry about that interpretation of classy, if the person comes, I think that could be a bone of contention in terms of litigation, if you ask me.
Can I just?
So I would rather regulate it to number versus classy versus non-classy in a way. Not to pick, I'm not picking on you, Gary.
We do not have to cite 20% or anything else, because part of this proposed ordinance is as provided in Mass General Law, Chapter 94G. So we're following what that law provides for, and there is that 20% provision. So we're better off not even mentioning it. We, as a community, are going to follow the letter of the law when it comes to what the provisions are. And we do have the fallback of the host agreement, where we can measure the reputation of the applicant, and we do have the special permit process. And we have it isolated to that particular overlay district, which is, that overlay district is located in a manner that it protects as many of the residential neighborhoods of town. It's out of the way. It's where the X-rated zoning district is provided for by law. You put all the little naughty things you don't want to be exposed to the general public in these little pockets that are out of the way of everything. And that's what we've done with this particular ordinance. And
Maybe we bring back the drive-through with the drive-in. Maybe we bring that back.
right. That's an historic fact.
So, unless there's anything else, I'd like to, for people who are watching, also, it's the 11th, which is the public hearing. April 11th is the public hearing on the public notice that is published Wednesday of this week.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's the hearing for this ordinance. That's FYI. And
Rob, one question for you. So April 11th, is some time off. There's one more selectman that is not here tonight. Will you be reaching out to him for his feedback, or just so I know?
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you said that. Can he contact us?
Sure.
Sorry. Is that him?
He just landed.
That's the encore performance. We're almost done.
So I will have him do that. He's away on business now, so it might not be the next 1 or 2 days, but I'll have him contact when he gets back.
Okay, yeah, so we'd love to hear from him. Thanks for mentioning that.
Sure.
And if there's nothing else, I'd like to wrap
Mr.
the
Chairman,
meeting up.
Hoover? I'd like a motion to,
I just want to say, we've done everything, I think, to really protect the town, okay, as best that can be provided for. But at the same time, allowing for this law, whether you agree to it or not, in the most minimal way.
Right.
And that's the key.
I'm still not really sure, Mr. Chair, what we have to do as a board. I mean, so we don't need to worry about a town meeting article or a ballot article on taking it if we follow what you're saying. But we could possibly,
Correct.
because there's other language that says that we can have more than 20%.
Attorney Eichman, I know you had a statement.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just want to be careful, so
yeah.
the idea, as I understand it, is the planning board is going to propose a zoning bylaw.
Yep.
So that will require town meeting approval like any other zoning. bylaw.
Okay, yeah, yes, okay.
Okay, yeah, it's
But
not,
what I meant by we was this board.
well, yes.
Well,
the
you have
goal for it is
to put it on the warrant.
Put it on the warrant.
Okay.
All right.
And then we're hoping that when we go to town meeting, everyone's gonna say we love this.
Chief Cudmore.
If I could ask the planning department, I know I work closely with John, but also since the chair and the board's here, when we started the process with Healthy Farms back in 2016, it was a special permit that really drove the operation of their requirements. I use it all the time, and you're working with Healthy Farms under the special conditions, sections 10 through 16, which are pretty clear with regard to the operation, as some of the things that Tilly had mentioned. And will that be the same for a special permit, so that I was allowed to participate, especially section 10, which was very specific about the operation, the impact of the community, any policing needs, and requiring the owner and the permit holder to report back at least quarterly if we desire, as well as if they shut down and things like that. So this document seems to be more important than the host agreement, because this seems to be the enforcement arm versus the money.
And the answer is absolutely yes. We would not approve a special permit without your signing off on that.
Right.
But now, the fact that an applicant wouldn't get to the planning board unless there was a host agreement in hand, I think gives the Board of Selectmen an opportunity to define what's going to be in that. And if you can make it more restrictive or less restrictive. I mean, clearly I would make it less restrictive personally, and I know some of you would make it more restrictive. But I think I think that's the first gate, and then we're the second gate.
So with that, Harry.
Mr. Chairman Hoover, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting of the evening.
Second?
Second.
Motion's been made, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No dissension.
Thank you so much.
To all members of the planning board, thank you again for your patience. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you, Sean. Attorney Eichman? Same.
Thanks, Jonathan.
If you're gonna be worried, you should be worried about your personal growth. Grow 12 plants in your house.
Yeah.
Has no quality control.
I mean, I can't even grow a tomato plant without it dying.
Why didn't they know before they
All right, folks, let's try to get through the rest and, all right, so just quickly, guys, all right, we got notice of resignation of Janice McGrain from the Rock Pond Bylaw Committee. So Janice, once again, thank you for your service, with that. Chief, do we have to replace her on that committee now?
That would be up to the committee. There are alternates.
Well, there are alternates.
That's why I was gonna say, so,
And they've been appointed, so it would be up to the committee to choose an alternate by way of the time, what date they applied to the
Okay.
committee initially.
how can we kind of check in with them on that?
Check with the chair.
Okay. Mike, can you check on that with the chair? I forgot who the chair was. Who was it? I forgot who it was, because they were just put together. Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right. So we got minutes of February 12th.
February 12th?
Yep.
Yeah, those were the ones I think you wanted changed.
Yeah, and, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Go ahead.
On that one, Janet did provide she had written some notes, she had gone through the tape and wrote it on there, but I'm having a difficult time reading them. Not that, nobody would be able to, not nobody, but I have a difficult time reading what was handwritten on there. And I would just like that to bypass the February 12th. And,
For clarification?
And, well, no, just to have them,
Wants to look them over first.
typing, yeah, but have it typed so it was readable.
They're right here.
I did make the amendments in the new one that
Well, I haven't seen it. That's the problem.
was in the packet, so.
Well, can we,
Right in.
Yeah.
I don't see a
on
problem
the,
with delaying it. We
Yeah.
can move on.
This is what I have.
Yeah, let them work it out.
Yep.
We're good.
Listen, I have no problem with that. I mean, we're not in any,
I'll
rush
get
to
it,
approve.
all right? Because I haven't seen it in any packet that I printed.
So Jan, just have Doug review them, and then we'll put it back on the agenda for next time. Executive session minutes for March 12th, 2018.
I don't have those in my packet now. I don't have the 12th or the 15th.
12th or the 15th. All right, so let's bypass that one as well. We'll put that on the next agenda. If you could get those out to to Doug and to Gary. All right, so we've done that. All right, town administrative report, Mike.
Well, I basically wanted to go over the spreadsheet that I passed out earlier in the meeting. But that seems gotten blown up. So,
This one? Wait till after tomorrow.
yeah. Yeah, I wanted to tell you where we stood on the,
No, it's still good to look at. I mean,
yeah, I mean, as of this afternoon, I found a way to pay for everything that we needed. It still looks, if you notice, there was $40,000 left over in the reserve fund, and we're looking for 27, so it still might not affect it. Now, we have used the reserve fund to cover shortages at the end of the year if we didn't have enough line item transfers, but we usually can cover things through line item transfers. The one that used to be health insurance. The biggest problem was health insurance, but we're really close. If we need anything to cover health insurance, it should only be in the, thousands of dollars, not the tens of thousands of dollars.
What about unemployment, Mike? Have we done well on that one?
Yeah, unemployment is fine. What, we only have $20,000 left to spend in legal. We got a partial bill for, the hearing process that we just went through, that cost $5,000. If we spend $5,000 a month for the next 4 months, we're billed a month behind, we'll slide in under budget, but it's very, very tight in legal.
you have Jonathan here for like 5 hours tonight. So.
Yeah, well, that would be, we probably just blew that other 5,000. But, no, and I just got the rest of the budget. Our revenues are on target. Tax revenues are on target. And budget expenditures, we're 75% through the budget year, and we're at 65% spent. So we're in good shape. So that's telling me, we'll have a good amount of money available for line item transfers is necessary, but better yet, might look good for free cash next year too.
Okay.
So.
Or a line item transfer if we need it.
Right.
Good.
So right now we're estimating around 245,000 in free cash.
Yeah.
That around 50,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And
where's our deficit right now, Mike? 95, just to confirm.
In the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, 95. the budget committee really hasn't had time to deliberate. The school came to the budget committee, the finance committee, on March 14th, and we really haven't had a meeting, either snowstorms or missed postings. We had a problem with some postings, so, but we're meeting tomorrow night. And they know what they need to do. Speaking of meeting tomorrow night, I think I sent you all an email. Well, Dave and Joe got the email. The Attorney General's office finally, was as of March 1st, came out with their Equal Pay Act guidance.
Oh.
They sent a tool which was extremely helpful. And I've utilized the tool. I'll pass it out tomorrow at our meeting. It didn't really show anything that we didn't suspect.
Okay.
But now, now based on the Attorney General's guidance, we know where we stand.
Okay.
And, we just have to make a plan to come into compliance within the next 3 years, basically.
Okay. Was that at 6 tomorrow night?
It is.
We meet?
Yeah,
Okay.
6, yeah. The FinCom meets at 7, so.
Yeah, let's see what my schedule was like. I didn't have it on there, so. Do you have the FinCom members coming too, Ed and Robbie? Are they coming?
Ed's gonna be there. I don't know if I got a response from Robin.
Okay.
I sent it out last Thursday.
Again, Ed and I don't have to be there.
I
have to be there.
But it's with the tool. There's three different spreadsheets that I put the data in, and the other two spreadsheets analyze it for me, and they tell you how much of percentage you're out of whack for female versus male employees, things like that, which is that's the important part of the act.
Been a busy week.
And I'll after we go over it tomorrow, I'll share it with the rest of the board.
So you haven't heard back from Robin yet?
I don't think I have. She may be traveling, I don't know, but I sent a second request. What's today? Today's Monday. Today.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't seen any response back yet, but again, her and David are probably the two most important parts of that meeting. So I guess as long as we have one of them, I'm comfortable, with that.
Yeah, I'm checking my email now. I haven't heard back from Robin. Doesn't mean she won't respond tomorrow morning. So that's all I have for the board.
Okay. As far as the warrants, one area that we spoke about the last time that I found that a lot of the board didn't have any recollection on in terms of putting it on the warrant. Again, we had discussion about it last meeting, was the quorum. I've gotten a couple of members that have given some concern over that, as we really haven't had that discussion in this setting. Again, we had some frustrations at the last meeting. We had talked about it. Do we? I want to open it up to the board because I don't think we've had any conversation about it at all. Do we want to keep that on here, or do we want to kind of take it off and then maybe approach it at another time?
I'll go if you want, Mr. Chair. at some point, we generally go over this whole thing.
Yeah.
Typically, and decide, and I mean, I'm okay with going to that point.
Okay.
My only, I think, thing would be that, you know, I'd like to see, we've gone over this before, as to, you know, how stuff gets here. Who, a name next to it, or a board next to it, as to why it was there, you know. But, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm okay with waiting, but at some point, I guess, yeah, when we go over this warrant, I guess at that point, we'll go over what we think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my feelings.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah,
Probably
I
have to
agree.
do that no later than our next meeting, the 9th.
All right, so why don't we put it on the next meeting then?
Mr. Chair, and then I think that we really need to invite Peter Durkee, the highway surveyor, to the meeting, being that his position has been put on the warrant as possibly being appointed instead of elected.
Right. And that was the other thing.
Conversation.
Yeah, the town clerk too. I mean, as a board, we gotta make sure we have that conversation. You know, again, that's, you know, a good point. Why don't we put that on the next agenda as well? Because we have to figure that out.
Well, if I'm understanding Mike correctly, are you saying it's probably at the next meeting that we need to go over this whole
We
warrant?
have to make decisions.
Yeah, it sounds like, because did you give this information to the rest of the board, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have it.
Okay.
I saw it.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, that's all you have? By the way, we're okay with the money. We've allotted money to tear down the house, right?
No.
5,000 short, remember?
Still 5,000 short?
I think that's on hold right now.
Yeah.
See, cannabis money, that money should be going.
We have no place where we can pull $5,000 from
You know, we were
to
supposed
tear
to
down that
discuss
much
that.
trust?
Well, we just killed
But you
the,
asked for it, I thought.
Well,
We just robbed Peter to pay Paul.
the legislature is working on that particular issue right now.
Well, do we not suspect we're gonna have any free cash left?
No, well, my best option is to have a reserve fund transfer to the highway department so they could participate and actually pay for the demo, because they're gonna work with Peter got a good quote, and his guys are gonna do trucking for the quote.
All right.
Yeah.
This comes out bad, but, you know, really, after town meeting, I don't wanna see that house anymore. Seriously, I mean, it's been there long enough, and people have to drive by it, and, you know, I think, for that amount of money, we can
You would have thought a
we can
tree
get
would
rid of
have fell on
that.
it.
Right, something, if we were lucky, you know,
Fell on the thing.
something. So, yeah, let's do what we have to do to get rid of that house, because it's been a night so far, I think, long enough. Any board members have anything else in terms of warrant that we wanna, you know, bring up?
No, I'm
No.
okay.
Okay. So we have a request for reappointment to the Board of Registrars from Hank Wolf.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so is there anything else?
You had
We have one other appointment?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
Second one? Oh, that's what this was for? All right. Yeah. Your guy, right?
Yes.
Why aren't I seeing this?
Just this here.
I know, but I don't have,
I had it here.
I don't know where it went.
Chair, just to give you an update,
Yeah.
Officer French has been working for the Georgetown Police Department since 2012. He had left. He had resigned for personal reasons and came back in 2016 and helped me with my Harbor Master program for the last 2 years. His schedule has opened up, and he's obviously trained and ready to go. I just have to issue him a gun belt, and can help the good lieutenant with the schedule in the month of April and up to the summertime for the vacancies that we have. And I'd ask that he be reappointed as a reserve officer. He's already serving with the police department. He already has uniforms and everything. But his formal appointment would end on June 30th of this year.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Jeffrey French as a reserve police officer with a term to expire June 30th, 2018.
Second?
Motion is second, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Any of the board members have anything else that they would like to bring up?
Yeah. Me.
Thank you. I wanna say-
Yeah. So, when let me just sign this. When I originally ran for this office, I said to a lot of people that I would be willing to do, if I was lucky enough and had the honor to serve for more than 3 consecutive terms, that at the end of that 3rd consecutive term, I would decide probably not to stay. And that is the case. I've decided not to seek re-election. I want to thank everybody, the community, especially the members of this board and former members of the board, Phil and Evan, O'Reilly, and Stu.
O'Reilly, way back.
Oh yeah, well, we're going way back. If I'm forgetting anybody, remind me. But Steve. Oh yeah, Steve Smith. It's been a good run. I'm not ruling out coming back at any certain point in time, but I always felt like, 9 years is enough. Let some new ideas come in, some new people. Certainly, there's a lot of people with ideas out there that get to us. Well, maybe they'll have their chance to serve. So, I do plan on staying on the Affordable Housing Trust. That's something that I want to stay on if this board will have me. And who's to say what the future holds? I may seek, another office at some point. We'll see. I may come back to this board at some point. So, but it's time for somebody else with some fresh ideas to come in and add more to the board. So thank you to everybody, especially thank you to the community who's really supported me tremendously. So thank you to everybody.
Well, thank you for serving, David.
Yep. Thank you, David.
Being willing to.
Yep.
I thank you for your time.
Yeah, there's a lot of time.
Together through the years.
We have, really.
And I'm sure David's been, like myself, David's been a great mentor to me, and I'm sure plenty of other people as well. So thank you for covering the road as well, Dave. Appreciate it. So listen, I'd like to end off with something, if nobody else has anything else. So to be an effective board, and to kind of gel. I know sometimes. And maybe even more than sometimes we don't agree on a lot of things. But I think moving forward, we have to have, meetings that are, cordial. And, I think that, there has to be a decorum, within our meetings, as well, to make sure they run well. So, first and foremost, I want to, make sure that the board, remembers that, listen, we're here, we're talking about town business. We have to keep that decorum, but, at the same time, it can't get, kind of away from us either, which I feel like the last meeting did. So, with that said, I'd like to apologize to the board, and to Gary specifically. My apologies for raising my voice. Certainly my emotion, kind of got away from me, a little bit. And, certainly hope that, it doesn't come to that again. But my apologies, Gary, that,
Thank you.
emotions got the best of me. So,
Accepted.
but with that said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor?
Second. Aye.
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 So did Gary make the
Okay.
motion and
Yeah.
second it?
Motion and second. Sure.
Thank you for all the support.
Thank you. You kidding me? You guys.
First one's a phone.